Happy Monday, everybody! Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. On Mondays, we get you ready for the Kyle Whittingham coaches press conference. That's a little early. It's supposed to be 11 a.m., but you know how it is. When you're talking about a guy who's been a head coach for 20 years. If you're not early, you're late. So Kyle Whittingham's press conference now. Oh, wait. Are you telling me Kyle Whittingham is not yet sitting at the podium? Okay, Zach, by the way, producing today. Most of the time, I got to, toss it right away. Is he there now? Here's the head coach.
Okay. Biggest issues in the game on Saturday, no particular order. Weren't able to run the ball almost at all. I mean, we only had 31 yards on 30 carries, which is abysmal. I mean, there's no way to win a football game with that rushing production. 4 turnovers, another problematic area that has been consistent this year. And defensively, inability to make plays on the ball up the field. They had a terrific wide receiving core, best we faced by far. And they made plays up the field. Number 12 is as advertised. He's a bona fide All-American and one of the best players in college football. The quarterback is terrific. And as bad as it was, we had the ball in really good field position in the fourth quarter, mid-fourth quarter, with an 11-point deficit, having a chance to make it a one-possession game, and proceeded to throw an interception. And so that dashed our hopes right there. They ended up capitalizing on that turnover with a touchdown, and that was pretty much the ball game. And so credit to them. They're a good football team. I said it after the game a couple times. I'll say it again. Best team we've played this year, without question. And Coach Sanders done a great job getting that thing turned around in a short period of time. So hats off to those guys. I got Iowa State coming in this weekend. Senior day for a big group of seniors. We've typically had, anywhere from 8 to 12. The last 2 or 3 years, we have about 25 this year. A lot of turnover, guys, outgoing players that will be finished with their eligibility. So hoping that the crowd will show up, and wish those guys all the best and thank them for what they gave to the program. A lot of those guys have won a lot of games for us through the years. So as every year is the case, we'll miss them, and tough to see them leave, but that's the nature of college football. And Iowa State, really good team. Number 1 in the conference in scoring defense. Got a good offense. Very balanced, a complete team. Very, very balanced football team. A lot like us offensively in their personnel usage. A lot of 12 personnel. In fact, that's their lead group, 2 tight ends, some 11, and even some 13, which we do as well, 13 personnel. So carry over in that respect that our defense is used to seeing those personnel groupings, and hopefully is a little better matchup for us than the spread attack that we saw last week. But they're battling for a spot in the conference championship game, so we're going to get everything they have. They're coming off a win against Cincinnati. Had a couple of losses prior to that. 8-2 football team that, like I said, is very, very complete. Quarterback's playing well, 3rd or 4th in the league in pass efficiency. Running the ball well. They're very balanced on offense. About 160, 170 rushing, and another 230 throwing, 240 throwing a game. So very balanced, over 30 points a week. Running back by committee, they got 3 guys that are sharing the carries and getting it done that way. Two really prolific receivers on the outside, the big guy on the outside and the slot receiver. So we got our hands full, and it'll be a challenge for us. But our guys have had, even with all the adversity and all the disappointment we faced this year, our guys still have a really good attitude and a lot of fight in them, and we still still trying to play for a bowl game these last 2 weeks, and that's still in play for us. And so that's where we're at. So questions? Okay, Justin, roll 'em.
Okay, how do you think that the new rule about a coach's ability to find players for the 25-26 season will impact college football as a whole?
Okay, say that again. The new rule to what?
The coach's ability to find players
We can find players?
next year?
We can find players?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Like for dropping a ball or for not going to class or what? I'm not. I guess I should be. If that's a rule, I should know what it is. But I must be ignorant to that rule.
And somebody, you don't know the new rule.
I'm surprised too. Somebody better start educating me a little bit better. So, find players. I'll dive right into that after this press conference and see what I can ascertain. How about that word? Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry I couldn't answer that.
On the same lines, how has this season impacted your recruiting approach this season in terms of high school transfer portal?
Well, it's going to be, going forward, pretty much like it's been, about 50-50. And it's going to be about an influx of 40 to 45 guys when all is said and done. Now, we're fairly confident and fairly certain that the roster limit's going to go down to 105, which will mean only 20 walk-ons instead of 40, and so that's going to have some impact. But as far as the scholarship players, it'll be about close to half the roster that you turn over, and again, that half of that roster is split pretty equally between high school and portal. Maybe a little lean towards the high school, but not much. It's going to be a heavy shopping season for us in the portal.
Kyle, the last few weeks on kickoffs, it's been kind of a struggle to get those touchbacks. Has that been just like a coaching decision to kick it short of the goal or kick it not into the end zone, or has it been just guys not being able to put it to the back of the end zone?
The latter. We would like every kickoff to be out of the back of the end zone and not have a chance to return it. And it's a good point you make. And we've got a higher percentage this year, I believe, than last year. Not a ton higher, but I think our touchback percentage is a little bit higher. And going back to the game, that's another big negative. Is we had another just a horrific play on special teams where they returned a punt for a touchdown early in the game, which is probably one of the top 4 or 5 momentum-changing plays in the game. We have analytics companies that send us the report after the game and the top most impactful plays, and it was right there. So that was not. I know it's not your question, but that was another thing that did us in. But no, to answer your question, we would love to never have to cover the kickoff, just spot the ball at the 25 and start playing. Yeah.
Kyle, programs across the country are starting to prepare for the revenue sharing future and divvying up money toward players. How, I guess, are you using that approach heading into the next recruiting cycle with transfers and freshmen or in high school recruits?
Well, using it just like we have been in the past, except it's going to be a bigger bump for us. You know, some schools it's a huge cut, but for us it's a big bump, and we've already got all the numbers budgeted, spreadsheets galore as far as what we're allocating to each position. You know, how much O, how much D. I mean, it's all mapped out now. It's just a case of going shopping in the portal and filling those needs within those financial parameters.
Yeah, to kind of follow up on that, a lot of programs are finding ways to use third-party entities, whether it be a collective, to kind of circumvent more money into the hands of recruits.
They'll circumvent, trust me. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of circumventing going on.
Is that something that you imagine Utah might?
Boy, I hope so. To stay in the game, we're going to have to. To stay in the game at all, we're going to have to, because Oregon seems to be the gold standard for all this stuff, and I guess I shouldn't speak too much about it because I don't know for 100%, but that, you know, they're upwards of $30 million overall, and I don't think that's going to drop off with the revenue sharing because they've got very deep pockets there, as do about 15 or 20 other blue bloods in the country. And so, if you want to try to keep pace, you're going to have to supplement the revenue share. Have to, if you want to keep pace. If you want to be average, then be average.
With Isaac Wilson, Obviously, in season, it's tough to focus a lot on development, but what is being done to promote his development and growth?
Yeah, extra meetings within the rules, of course, but extra film time. He comes in on his own and watches a ton of film, so we're doing everything we can. He's doing everything he can to continue to develop and see things quicker, and that was another issue in the game, particularly early on. It got better as the game wore on, but holding the ball too long and need to go through those reads and spit it out or tuck it and run. Make sometimes there's a clock in head. You hear people talking about when you're coaching quarterbacks, the clock in head. When that clock expires and there's nothing there, you got to get out and go, because otherwise bad things are going to happen.
Utah has to hire an offensive coordinator this offseason. With the regular season ending in 2 weeks, at what point do you start putting together a list of potential candidates, or is that something you've already done?
That's going on right now, evaluating what we're doing, what's attractive candidates outside the program, and evaluating everything right now and getting the short list ready. But yeah, that'll be job one. As soon as the timing is right to get that filled. And, recruits want to know who the coordinator is going to be, and that's something that we will need to have solved sooner rather than later.
3 of the 4 teams that can still win the conference title have had dramatic turnarounds from the last season. And you played all 3, whether it's the transfer portal or what. What do you attribute to these dramatic turnarounds?
The transfer portal or what? Yeah, the transfer portal. First and foremost, no doubt about it, and I think you're going to continue to see that. Well, look at Colorado 2 years ago where they were, and that could never have been done in the old rule structure. You could never have turned it over that quick and got to the point that fast. And as I said before last week, Coach Sanders done a great job of using the system that's in place to his advantage, and that really is the blueprint for anybody else that's in that situation to completely turn over the roster, but that's exactly what it is, and why you see more dramatic changes than you ever used to in who's up, who's down, and the jockeying for position.
So that might not be with the transfer, not necessarily the first year, because a couple of these teams, well, all 3 of them had losing records last year. You might see it the second year.
Yeah, it's not. It's tough. 2 years in the past, you couldn't do it in 2 years. It was a 4 or 5 year project for a program that was completely down to get back to where you need, maybe 3 years, but now you see it happen in a year or 2, and really manifesting that second year. The first year you lay the groundwork, put a lot of the pieces in place, and then the second year you add to that and get some momentum, and that's kind of where you're at.
So along those lines, the strength of the Utah football program from a long time has been able to identify guys that maybe other programs didn't, and then develop them.
Right.
But with people coming and going so quickly, how do you develop them, and does that take away an advantage that you've leaned on for a couple of decades?
Yeah, no excuses, but that was our formula. Recruit, develop, and manage, and with the turnover and with the way the portal is now, that system is, I don't want to say it's a dinosaur, but it is very hard to continue to have work. And so, and that also plays into, you got to take a hard look at your schemes, because your schemes better be plug and play now. You can't have a scheme that's so complicated and so in depth that it takes a guy 2 or 3 years to learn it, because you don't have that time anymore. And so that's another conversation we're having, another facet of what we're doing that needs to be streamlined, because like I said, you collect all the talent you can in the off season, and then just hope it gels and has chemistry, and they better be able to assimilate the offense and the defensive schemes in that short period of time in order to function. And so that's something that we're looking at hard and making sure we get corrected.
With a little more short-term horizon here, just looking at the next game, a couple other things you guys have really used well is energy and confidence.
Right.
And a 6-game losing streak can eat away at both those things. How do you address that with this team for next week?
Yeah, well, it's been challenging. Fortunately, we have a high-character football team. We've got some really good leaders, although we've lost some really good leaders along the way as well. But there seems to be no divisions, no splintering of the team. And if you come out to practice and watch, which unfortunately you can't do, maybe we should change that. But you'd see that everybody's working hard, everybody's all in, everybody's focused. You know, you can tell if a team is not focused, and I mean, there's guys' minds wandering, they're in la la land, and you can tell when that's going on. And we've had none of that. We've had everybody locked in and focused, and so that's not the issue. That is not the issue, and hopefully we can hang on these last 2 weeks and not have it be the issue these last 2 weeks.
Going back to the offensive coordinator hire situation, how involved, given his head coach and waiting tag, is
Very
Morgan Taylor?
involved.
Okay.
Very involved. Yep, very involved, and it would be an injustice if he wasn't. And so, given our situation, he's working side by side with me. Yep.
Kyle, given back to the stakes of revenue sharing, Cam, from what I know, has been the highest paid player, or one of the highest paid players in college football at the quarterback position. Given that he hasn't played very much the past 2 years, has that approach of how much you've paid the quarterback the past 2 seasons affected how you're going into it this next season?
Well, you're right. Cam was well compensated, as he should be. He's an elite quarterback in the country, but not having him on the field has been, a big part of our struggles. But going forward, that's not going to change. The average price of a pretty decent P1 starting quarterback is about $1 million, and it goes up from there. And there's going to be 2 or 3. Somebody said that the Tennessee quarterback makes several million. I don't know if that's true or not, but no, that's not going to change because the market is what it is, and it's been driven up, and you're seeing there's offensive tackles commanding $2 million. It's crazy, but it's the world that we live in right now, and it's not going to change. It's not going to go backwards. And so, to answer your question, no, we can't be deterred by a hefty price tag if it's it's the most important position by far, hands down, no questions asked. I've said that many times, and so you can't compromise and try to get a bargain and get by with something that you don't think is elite, I guess is the word.
Final question.
To build off of that, Spencer Fano's had an elite season.
Say who?
Spencer Fano.
Yes.
How do you approach, in terms of, we're talking so much about portal targets, but keeping your own players? How do you go about that process?
That's a huge part of it, and we've already started discussions with certain players, and that'll continue to expand these last 2 weeks, and because the portal's right around the corner, and these guys deserve to know where they stand, what the financial picture looks like for them, because it's not fair to them if you don't, and it's not fair to us or them. We need to try to get on the same page, and some guys will say, yep, that's good, I'm locked in, I'm happy, and some guys will say, well, need to investigate and maybe take a look around at the market, and so it's happening, and it will continue to happen in a more concentrated effort with it as the season ticks down, because the 9th is 20-something days away. It's close. It's coming quick. That's it? Dang, I'm just enjoying this. Okay. All right.
That's Kyle Whittingham enjoying a press conference. Look, there's actually a lot to unpack from that question and answer session here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome, by the way, to all of you on a Monday. We've got Scott Mitchell joining us today. We've got Pete Futak, National College Football Insider. We've got Jerem Jordan to talk about BYU's first loss of the season. Just a lot going on today. There's actually a heck of a lot to take away. And, Zach, I'm going to actually give you some homework because there was some really, really good sound in there from Kyle Whittingham. Now, when I say there's a lot to take away, what you just had was a room full of people, reporters, Utah beat writers, whatever, asking Kyle Whittingham big picture questions because the short term, the small picture, everyone in that room, and seemingly Kyle Whittingham himself, is kind of agreeing that, like, we're punting to next year.
Yeah.
Like, the conversation was all about the transfer portal coming up, how you manage the changes that are hurtling towards us in college football, there was actually very little discussion of Iowa State.
Yeah, and I was about to say that too. Like, we didn't hear one question.
There was one question about Iowa State, and I understand why. I'm not criticizing that.
No.
I think this is actually probably if there's a correct approach, I think this is the one where you're just like, it's time for all of us to acknowledge that this entire season has been a disaster for Utah football, and how do you now play damage control on that disaster with your roster? And that is clearly where the thought process is of the media here in Salt Lake City, and that is the thought process, at least to some extent, of this coaching staff, who now has to find the right balance of making sure you still prepare the right way. You have seen, like, this is going to be the most somber senior day in Utah football, at least its Power 5 history. All of the other years, even the rough years in the Pac-12, you were able to kind of like celebrate how things were going with the seniors because it was still early in the Pac-12 era. Some of those guys had helped transition the team from being a Mountain West Conference team to a Pac-12 team. And there was always like, oh, well, there's that great bowl game that this guy had, and oh, we're trending upwards, and he's been a big part of that. And this year, there's going to be, it's going to be like a lot of golf claps. And I don't want it to be that way because there's going to be guys walking on senior day that have been some of the all-time greats in this program. So make sure you get there on Saturday. I'm going to have to repeat that every day this week. And I know it's going to be a little bit crisp and a little bit chilly, and it's not a super appealing game because you're now the number one scoring defense in the Big 12 Conference is coming to Rice-Eccles Stadium to take on a really bad scoring offense. So the reason that you're going to want to go is to honor those seniors that get to suit up at home for one last time. In any case, though, this press conference, I'm a bit taken aback because it was 3 minutes of Coach Witt talking about the disaster of the Colorado game, and it was 3 minutes of Coach Witt talking about Iowa State, and then it was 10 minutes of Coach Witt talking about big picture stuff. And that is usually like kind of a no-no in season, especially late in season. I mean, if you rewind and you had this conversation even last year when it was a relatively disappointing season, you would have been chastised for asking big picture questions when there was a game to play this weekend. So I'm slightly taken aback and I'm slightly refreshed by the idea that like everyone's head is in a more natural place. But I do want to talk about this Colorado football game because you have to give credit where credit is due. And Kyle Whittingham did in the post game after the game itself. He did today in the press conference. He said that is the best team that Utah has faced this year. And based on the performance by the University of Colorado, that's absolutely correct.
I agree. I definitely agree.
I mean, all credit to BYU, still the highest ranked team in the Big 12 Conference and undefeated when they faced Utah. You would rather play BYU again than play Colorado again.
I would think
Utah
so.
fans would rather go and try and take another crack at BYU and feel like we could get them this time. I don't think there's anybody looking at this Colorado team and being like, yeah, we play them 10 times, we'll win 9 of them. That's a good football team right now, and that was also part of the discussion in the Kyle Whittingham press conference today. How rapidly Deion Sanders turned this thing around. There's plenty of reason to criticize how he acted in the offseason, but you cannot criticize what Coach Prime has done this year. You can't. He has taken a team that 2 years ago was the absolute laughingstock of major college football, and he has turned them into, I think in a lot of people's minds, a conference champion frontrunner. When the projections come out, not the college football playoff rankings, but when the projections not on the official ESPN show come out, a lot of people are going to think that it's Colorado on its way to a conference championship. And they still have games to play, and no one's crowning them yet. But if you're talking about teams now that have played 9 games, Colorado looks like 9 or 10 games in some cases. Colorado looks like they are the best team in the Big 12 Conference. They finished their year with Kansas. That is a road game. They have Kansas on the road, 1:30 p.m. on Fox, and then they've got the lowly Oklahoma State Cowboys. Now, Kansas is playing good football right now. Kansas doesn't have the same kind of talent that Colorado does, and Oklahoma State has been embarrassingly bad this year, but that's just the kind of trap game that you have to worry about if you're a team that is rolling and if you're a team that is thriving. And that's absolutely the situation Colorado is in right now. Two off seasons ago, they were the darlings. They were the media darlings. They were the team that everyone wanted to discuss, and probably not for the correct reasons in every case. But now, when you talk about this Colorado team, I mean, set aside what Shedeur Sanders is at the quarterback position and what his wide receiving core is, and just look at what the defense did. I get it. Utah's offense is bad, and a lot of defenses are going to have their best game against this Utah offense, but not in the way that we saw Colorado have a great game. They were getting after it. They were stopping a Utah run. They were playing physically. This Colorado team has silenced my doubt about whether or not they're built to win sustainably, because what they have is a bunch of really good players that are playing hard, and then they've got 3 or 4 superstar elite talents. Really, it's 2 superstar elite talents, and then like 3 guys that are just underneath that, and then, of course, a bunch of quality starters. And that's a shock to me. I thought you were only going to have Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and maybe like Jimmy Horn Jr., who's now your 4th best receiver, I thought would be a bigger factor. The Wester kid that they got from, is it Florida International or Florida Atlantic? He's unbelievable. So Coach Prime went out and he found the right guys, and I thought Jordan Seaton, their 5-star starting left tackle, true freshman, I thought he was going to have more significant growing pains. He's far from perfect, but there's a reason that he was at IMG Academy in high school, and there's a reason he was the 2nd highest ranked offensive lineman in his recruiting class. Colorado looks good. Utah continued to look bad. And I actually thought you had one of the worst case scenarios develop in this Utah football game, where Isaac Wilson had the hot and cold game that nobody wants to see out of Isaac Wilson. Isaac Wilson had a 3-interception, 4-turnover game because of the fumble as well. He also threw a couple of beautiful touchdown passes. One in particular, finally, hallelujah, finally getting Dorian Singer into the end zone on a beautiful pass. Isaac Wilson, in my opinion, when you see those moments, and it's been 4 weeks since we've seen one of those moments where you're just like, aha, that's why you love him.
Yeah,
that's why you wanted him. That's why you need him. That's why Isaac Wilson was a high priority for you and why you gave him the start. It's been like 4 weeks since you've had that moment, and he gave you at least a couple in this Colorado football game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are so negative right now on Isaac that those moments don't wash out the turnovers and don't wash out any of the bad stuff. But I see those, and I'm like, I actually don't want to see that right now. I want to make a clear decision on whether or not this guy is the future. And when you see that, you're like, it makes it harder to know. Because if you just go by the past 4 weeks, I guess 4 of the past 5 weeks, because, of course, one of those games was Brandon Rose. You look at it, you're just like, I don't know, man. Like, I understand why you wanted him. I understand why you liked him, but I don't know if he's the answer moving forward. And then you finally got a couple of those throws in this game where you're just like, yeah, but you could develop him into being the answer. You could get this guy to be the answer if that's what he's capable of. If he has that arm talent, maybe you could get that from him. So to me, that was actually the worst case scenario for Utah. If anything, because of how bad the season was, you kind of want it to be like, all right, just give me a clear cut. You are not good or you're great. And instead you got this game where some of the moments were just awful. And then at least a couple of the moments were like, yep, that's our guy right there. It's not today. He's not ready to be the man, but that's someone you can grow into the man. 877-353-0700 is the Dish Pros text line. As always, looking for your feedback, looking for your opinions on this Utah football, again, loss to the University of Colorado. It is it's bad. It's ugly. It's not a good situation for the Utes. But it is what it is. You've got Iowa State and you've got UCF to finish out. I don't have a ton of confidence that this team has the motivation to find themselves bowl eligible. I thought that this Colorado game would be a little bit of what we saw, would be an emotional letdown type game, would be a game where you looked at it and said, there's 7 dudes that are still giving it their all, and the rest of this team has at least subconsciously checked out a little bit. As hard as the coaching staff is going to fight against that narrative and is going to fight against that reality, when you're going up against a team as good as Colorado, it can manifest itself very, very quickly. 49-24 the final score, and that performance, by the way, drops Utah's number 1 scoring defense down to number 3 in the conference. You're now behind Iowa State and BYU defensively, and your silver linings even are starting to erode just a little bit. Your inability to run the ball was one of the silver linings. You could run the ball in past games, and in this one, that failed you as well. So I'm torn between just saying, all right, sorry about Utah, but let's talk about one of the interesting stories, Colorado. It's not my job here. Okay. Opening segment of the Sean O'Connell Show is always brought to you by Alvi Armani and alviarmani.com. If you're having any sort of hair loss issues, it's thinning, the bald spot's starting to appear, you're worried about looking like Friar Tuck, the hairline is retreating, Alvi Armani and alviarmani.com. They'll help you out, gentlemen and ladies. Don't deal with hair loss or full hair. Utah Sports Radio for the highlights. That is Bill Riley on the call. That play right there, if you could have like 5 of those plays a game, this would be an undefeated Utah team. Isaac Wilson and Dorian Singer beat Travis Hunter. That is one of the best corners in all of college football. I love that. That's exactly what I'm talking about, though. The young freshman who's had all of his struggles, had all of his – a lot of – like a wiser – for back of a better term quarterback, might look at that and go, Hunter's on Singer. I'm probably going to have to like progress very quickly through that read because Singer's not going to get open on Travis Hunter. But, dude, he went after one of the best players in all of college football and got Dorian Singer finally, thank goodness, the touchdown that he so greatly deserves, and he deserves 10 more, but he's not going to end up with 10. Just an unbelievable pass, an unbelievable play, unbelievable route, unbelievable catch, unbelievable focus. Isaac Wilson to Dorian Singer. Oh, it hurts you because you know that is the ceiling. That is like the cream that you can skim off the top of this performance. And if you could stack those and make them a little bit more consistent, you'd be able to say, all right, keep this Isaac Wilson kid here and things are going to be just fine for Utah football. But you don't know because he also threw the 3 interceptions. He also had the fumble. He also looks like a true freshman, again, with the lack of recognition and with the taking hits that he doesn't need to take. And, I never played the quarterback position at a high level. I can't really tell you how difficult it is to make the transition from being on a stacked high school roster, playing against other high schools, to now jumping and putting, all of your efforts and all of your focus in to catching up with the pace and the speed and the talent of a major college football program with teams that are going to send, 4 or 5 guys to the NFL. I'm sure that Isaac Wilson, when he was a high school player, squared off against 1 or 2 guys that are going to be in the league. Now, on a weekly basis, he's facing 2 or 3 guys and sometimes as many as 5 that are going to be NFL players, and trying to make that transition has not been easy for him, and I don't expect that it should be, and I'm not being critical of him for the fact that it wasn't, but when you see passes like that one, that highlight we just played, and when you see him getting Dorian Singer into the scoring column for the first time all year, you're looking at that and you're saying like, well, geez, but he's capable of beating that NFL corner. And not because he was being sneaky and did the look-away pass or anything. He just put the ball in a perfect spot.
Yeah, it was
and
a
Dorian
beautiful
Singer
ball.
is an NFL-caliber wide receiver, and that's why it happened. So there were some bright spots, and that was one of them. Carson Ryan with his best game as a Ute, 4 catches for 78 yards. Carson Ryan is a bright spot on this roster. He's been great all year, quietly so. I gave everyone a homework assignment, Zach. I said on Twitter, give me the top 10 guys, since we focus so much in the press conference today on the future and on things like roster retention and a new revenue sharing model. I'm going to go up there to the Utah football facility. I'm going to crawl through the ductwork. I'm going to rappel down from the ceiling. Please tell me you've at least seen Mission Impossible.
Of course I have.
Really?
I have.
Okay. It's dicey. I got to stop doing movie references with the young producers, okay? When Zach is here, he's not anywhere near my age. What are you like in your early 20s?
22.
You're 22 years old. I'm old enough to be your dad.
You are.
So there's not a situation where you and I have been watching the same movies consistently. I'm glad you've at least seen Mission Impossible. I desperately want to do the Ethan Hunt, rappel from the ceiling, and snatch 2 things from this Utah football facility right now. Kyle Whittingham said there are spreadsheets showing the planned revenue distribution model by position, by offense, by defense. I want to see what those look like for Utah. I also want to see the list of offensive coordinators that is being put together by Kyle Whittingham and by Morgan Scalley.
Yeah, I do too. I'm curious where they're at. Like, who do you considering? Like, is Bajakin on that list?
Would you hold on? Let me ask you this, right? Because you could really do yourself a huge favor in your career. You could get yourself ahead if you could somehow obtain those lists for me, Zach. So Are you willing to potentially be arrested to go find those lists?
Possibly.
Is that a risk you're willing to take? You would actually.
If you take the risk with me, I'll do it.
I know. I will not be accomplice to this, because if you get arrested stealing the lists and you send them to me, and I also get arrested with you, then I don't get to come on the air and tell people what's on the lists.
I don't get to come on the air either with you.
Yeah, but that's okay, because like right now, your job is to be a producer, to provide the content. I get to take all the credit. It's just kind of how the pecking order works, you know?
That's true. That is true.
By the way, that would flip very, very quickly if you were the one who got the lists. If they'd just be like, oh, this guy, he's the list guy. He's the guy who got us the revenue distribution list and then the coaching candidate lists, and suddenly you'd have your own show.
You would give me so much credit.
I want desperately to see what both of those look like, because I know in my head, Kyle Whittingham said in the press conference, and by the way, available on the ESPN 700 app, available online at ESPN700sports.com. You should take a listen if you didn't have a chance to tune in live. Maybe we'll play it again later, because there was some really, really fascinating stuff there. But Kyle Whittingham talked about, the price of a quarterback. And he said any halfway decent starter is now $1 million at the quarterback position, which means that somewhere on that spreadsheet that he referenced, there's a row and a column that says quarterback position and has a dollar figure next to it.
100%. And we look at Cam Rising, who's getting paid a butt ton of money.
Yes, Cam Rising is being paid a lot. And an astute question asked today, hey, well, you paid Cam Rising a lot of money and didn't get a lot of performance out of him. The way that I look at that, and I hope that other Utah fans can look at it this way as well, is Cam Rising has been retroactively compensated for the Pac-12 championships.
I agree.
He wasn't getting paid big money when he won those championships. He has since been paid big money, and I know you wish you would have seen him on the field, but when Cam Rising exits this program, and I think that'll be this year, when Cam Rising makes his exit, he has not been overpaid. Okay? He's not. Cam Rising is going to leave Utah being duly compensated for giving you two of the best years in program history. Yeah. So even though it didn't happen in the natural, normal timeline, I look at it and I say, okay, whatever he's being paid, those 2 seasons for Utah football were worth it. These last 2 seasons, unequivocally not worth it, but those 2 where he wasn't making all that money, those were worth the big chunks of change that he gets now. So the Cam Rising thing, don't let it blind you or affect your perception of how much Utah should be paying a quarterback moving forward. The reason I want to see that spreadsheet so badly is I want to see the number they've allocated for a quarterback. He said a halfway decent quarterback is going to cost you $1 million. To me, that says, all right, well, if a halfway decent guy is $1 million, a great one's $2 million. I want to know, have you decided you're going to pay $2 million? Or have you said, well, we could probably get by paying 1.5. We could probably get by paying 1.25. Maybe if we're lucky, we can get a good quarterback at $1 million, because I believe we can develop somebody as long as we make the right hire at the offensive coordinator position. It's not a mundane detail to me. I truly want to know. It's going to be about 20. I think the number I looked at was about $22 million of revenue share that goes to players. I'm giving at least 10% to the quarterback. If this was an NFL roster, you'd be giving 30% to the quarterback. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to say, all right, well, 10% would be too I will pay a quarterback $5 million plus to be the guy at Utah, because you can't put too many chickens or too many eggs in one basket. I mean, there's just that becomes its own conversation that I thought we wouldn't have until we got to the offseason. But because the season has been so bad, everyone's all ready to turn the page. It's wild. So I need that list. Zach, do what you got to do. Get me the offensive coordinator list and get me the list of revenue allocation by player position, by offense, by defense, and I will, I don't know, I'll do something nice for you.
Let me get in my suit-up car.
When I bring Spence Checketts his baklava shake, I'll bring one for you as well.
Ooh, that sounds so yummy.
They are very good. All right. The hot lunch is coming. I have a list for you. It's not one that we've stolen from the Utah football facility, not one referenced by Kyle Whittingham in the press conference today, but I've got a list for you, and we're going to see if Zach knows what this list is just by the names that are on it. That's coming in the hot lunch. And yes, unfortunately, there is some Colorado focus to what's coming because the Buffaloes, I think, are on their way at least to a Big 12 championship game appearance. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN. Hot Lunch today is brought to you by our good friends at Lemon Shark Poke. They get their fish from the same distributors that your white tablecloth restaurants are getting their fish. So any fancy place that you go for your sushi or any fancy place you're going for seafood here in Salt Lake City, they get the fish every single day. So does Lemon Shark Poke. And then they serve it to you in these delicious poke bowls with a sushi rice that is just the correct amount of sticky. You can make your own bowl. The possibilities are endless. I mean, you've got dozens of sauce combinations. I do the shoyu salmon, the garlic crunchies, the edamame beans, the ginger, a little mango is good on there, a little bit of pineapple is good on there. Lemon Shark Poke in the Judge Building right here on 300 South in Salt Lake City. Tell them OC sent you for some hot lunch. All right. Here's a list for you. Zach, I need you to pay attention. Even though you're a very young man, I think you might have a good sense of what this list is getting at, all right? Vince Young, Adrian Peterson, Eugene Monroe, Andre Smith, Joe McKnight, Daquan Bowers, Matt Barkley, Ronald Powell, Jadeveon Clowney, Dorial Green-Beckham, Robert Kemdiche, Leonard Fournette, Trenton Thompson, Rashawn Gary, Jalen Phillips, Trevor Lawrence, Nolan Smith, Brian Brissy, Quinn Ewers, Travis Hunter, Arch Manning, Jeremiah Smith. That is a list of names, some of which you recognize easily, some of which you probably had to think a little bit harder. 877-353-0700 on the Dish Pros text line. Tell me, what is that list? What those names on that list, do you know what I just gave you a list of? Zach, do you have any idea what those guys all have in common?
Probably from the same high school, same state.
That would be the most incredible high school in the history.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine that high school football program. No, what all these are, again, scream it at your radio as you're driving in the car. I know you know the answer. All of these guys that I just mentioned carry the distinction of being the number one recruited player in his respective high school class. According to the 24/7 composite score, you go all the way back to Vince Young. Those guys were all the number one recruits. And the reason I brought that up is because 10 of those names are guys that went on to great success at the NFL level. So about half of those dudes were both great college football players, and most of them made millions upon millions in the NFL. And Travis Hunter is the salient name here because Travis Hunter was the number one overall recruit on composite, and really in practicality, he obviously should have been. You didn't miss on Travis Hunter. These recruiting services do a really good job now of talent evaluation, and they've got a ton of resources and film study and input from coaches and players that know exactly what they're looking at, or they themselves are coaches or players, or just folks in the sports world that know exactly what they're looking at. So when you look at that list, going back about 20 years of the number one overall recruit in all of college football, names like Vince Young, Adrian Peterson, Joe McKnight, Robert Kemdiche, Leonard Fournette, Rashawn Gary, Trevor Lawrence, not one of those guys can you look at and say, he actually worked out even better than Travis Hunter did. Travis Hunter, on that list of number one overall recruits, not all of whom were first-round draft picks, but more than half of were draft picks, you could make an easy argument that he's the best one of all of them. He's going to win a Heisman Trophy this year.
I still think it's going to be Genty, in my opinion.
He's not. Ashton Genty has no chance of beating Travis Hunter for a Heisman Trophy.
I really, really hope that he commits to the NFL. He's going to be a top pick, same as Shador.
Look, Genty is a great, great player. This is not a commentary on his ability at all. But I saw somebody make this observation this weekend. We have seen great running backs in college football in the past. We have seen even maybe better running backs than Ashton Genty, although he belongs up there with guys like Adrian Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
We have never seen anybody doing what Travis Hunter has done. Charles Woodson didn't do it. Champ Bailey didn't do it. Nobody has done what Travis Hunter is doing. He is a one of one. We have never seen someone playing at this level. Miles Jack was a great two-way player at UCLA a few years back. Nobody has been as good going both ways as Travis Hunter. No running back has been that good that he cancels out the whole All-American status, all-conference level play on the opposite side of the ball. Ashton Genty, all respect to him, he should be in New York for a Heisman Trophy ceremony. It's going to be Travis Hunter, and you might as well invite Shador to be like the fifth-place guy since they're best friends and they're on the same team. It's going to be Ashton Genty. It's going to be probably Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward, I think.
That's a good list. It's a good list.
But Travis Hunter, when you compare him, even with the number one recruits, at least half of whom have gone on to great professional success, Travis Hunter is the guy that if I'm that high school talent evaluator, I look back and say, yeah, I was right about him. That's the dude. That's the dude. I mean, he is unbelievable. And I don't know where he's going to get drafted. I know he's going to be a first-round draft pick, but because of need and because of the importance of the quarterback position and the fact that there are some really good ones in this class, I don't know if Travis Hunter is going to be like the number 3 guy taken. He's going to be like number 8. I mean, we'll get to that in the draft evaluation process. But I think we're going to talk about this dude as being one of the greatest overall football players of all time. Certainly on the collegiate front, yes. And you go back and you watch his high school tape, and you're like, yeah, it makes sense that he was the number 1 overall recruit. Nearly a perfect composite score. So I wanted to give people that list. Those are the other guys that belong in that same category. Number 1 overall high school recruits, and Travis Hunter, you can make a case, is just as good or better than any of them. It's really, really impressive what the man has done. And even though it hurts you as a Utah fan, his stat line against the Utes was, again, ridiculous. You look at the box score, and you see Travis Hunter's name. He had 1 rushing attempt for 5 yards and a touchdown. You had 5 catches for 55 yards, which is actually a relatively quiet game for him in receiving. And then, of course, you had his defensive stats, 3 tackles and an interception returned for 21 yards. But you beat him one time at least. Got into the end zone. So that's your hot lunch today here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Travis Hunter, again, showing why he will be the eventual Heisman Trophy winner. I was confident all year in saying that he should be in the conversation. We're now to the point where Colorado's team success and his individual success have reached a point in which he will be the guy. The only real threat I thought even like 3 weeks ago was Cam Ward. If Cam Ward somehow found a way to take Miami to an undefeated season, the quarterback, the bias toward the quarterback position, it just makes it impossible to beat. But Travis Hunter is going to have that trophy, and I think he deserves it. Quick reminder to all of you that we have a new partner here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Farmer and Chemist, they've been taking care of us. My guy Alonzo had a little surgery, and surgeries, they cause chronic pain. And when you have chronic pain, maybe you need some CBD products. My wife been dealing with some back pain, a little bit of a slip disc. How do you manage that? Well, there's a lot of different medications you can take, or maybe you don't want to go with the traditional pharmaceutical route because you're worried about what these pharmaceutical companies are doing now, chemically, ethically, whatever your concern is. There are alternatives, but you don't want to just be walking into a gas station and grabbing some CBD product. You want to go to a place that is pharmacist directed, and that is exactly what Farmer and Chemist is. Down in historic Midvale on Main Street in Old Midvale, they've got stuff for you. They got stuff for your pets. They've got sleep aids. They've got stuff for your pain. They've got balms and salves and roll-ons if you have chronic muscle or joint pain. And if you don't know which one is for you, I don't know if I need a gummy. I don't know if I need a tincture. Just go down there and ask the question and tell them that OC sent you. Mention ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, and you will get 20% off. Sean O'Connell Show continues. A lot more to talk about. A wild, wild weekend in sports. Don't go anywhere. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. Utah Sports Radio Network for the sound once again. Big thanks to Bill Riley for great calls in that Colorado game, bringing the energy. Of course, the game was not completely out of hand at any of those points. How about Caleb Lohner? 4 catches, 4 touchdowns this year. Talk about a specialist. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with his future moving forward. Utah basketball is in action. Utah's men's basketball team has his name listed on the roster, but of course he's got this whole football thing to figure out, and there's going to be at least a few teams interested in his abilities at the pro level. Caleb Lohner is a big, athletic guy who has at least shown some acumen for catching passes. He's going to get a workout or two. Whether it's something more than that will be interesting to see. So does he actually play basketball for Coach Smith this year at Utah? Does he focus on preparing himself for an NFL combine if he gets an invite, or at least for the pro day workouts, which he doesn't have to get an invite to? That's going to be a fascinating thing. I sent out a homework assignment for all of you on Twitter at Real OC Sports. As Kyle Whittingham and company were discussing the future at length in the press conference and focused on not the week ahead, not Iowa State, but on how you handle the changing revenue distribution in college football, how you handle things like retaining your own roster. Tell me the priority for you. As a fan of this Utah football team, tell me who you have to keep. You cannot afford to lose. It's a much more daunting task to go look in the transfer portal when it starts to grow, when you see that list start to come out. And again, December 9th is when players can put their names in. Although some guys have already taken the opportunity to make their intentions known. Jalen Glover comes to mind. Who do you need to retain for this Utah football team? Whether it's Kyle Whittingham next year or Morgan Scalley next year, who do you need to be able to tell your offensive coordinator, whoever's on that top secret list they've got, this is what's going to be available for you, at least on the offensive side of the ball? Who are the players on this Utah football roster already that you absolutely, under all circumstances, retain? You have to keep them, whether it's through the money from NIL and from this revenue distribution, whether it's from making promises for reps, I don't know. A lot of the same names coming in, and people have been very good in responding so far at Real OC Sports. You can text it in also if you want, 877-353-07. I said give me 10, and people are giving me some assortment of whatever. Here's one from Casey Sato. The Fano brothers are on virtually everyone's list, by the way. Spencer and Logan Fano are on everyone's list, and I agree wholeheartedly. You got to keep both of those bright young talents in your locker room. Cameron Calhoun, some people have him as their number one priority. Cam Calhoun is a good player, a healthy Cam Calhoun, further developed by this Utah football team, could become a truly great player. Smith Snowden is on basically every list. Carson Ryan on a lot of the lists. Keanu Tanuvasa is on most of these lists. Lander Barton on some of the lists. And Lander Barton is a guy with unlimited potential. He has not lived up to that this year, although he's been good. And the first play of the game against Colorado was maybe his best play of the year for this Utah football defense. Seeing a ton of those names that I just brought up. Teo Johnson making his appearances on most of the lists as well. Landon King is on a lot of lists. And I got to be honest with you guys. The Landon King fascination is a little bit lost on me. I try not to be overly critical and overly aggressive in my evaluations of talents on the college football level. He's played so far in all 9 of the games this year. Last year, he had 14 catches for 166 yards and 3 touchdowns. Most of that was at the tail end of the season. And there was, again, in a more optimistic window for Utah football, there was this idea that, oh, watch what this guy's going to be next year. Well, you knew that when Brant Keithy got healthy that Landon King was probably not going to be your number one most athletic, most versatile tight end. That's going to be Brant Keithy. But this offense has never been shy about playing two of those guys at the same time, even three of those guys at the same time. Even this year, a situation where there's been four of those guys, those tight ends on the field at the same time. Landon King's stats in 2024 have been absent, negligible.
Yeah, barely seen any action from him.
And a lot of people think that's the coaching staff's fault. Landon ran the wrong route in the game, and that resulted in an interception for Brandon Rose. He's had at least one drop. I don't watch his number every single play that he's on the field, but he hasn't flashed. He hasn't burst out. He hasn't forced his way into anything. So do I want to see this roster retain Landon King? Yes. Would I put a top 10 priority on keeping Landon King on the roster? Absolutely not. That's harsh, I suppose, but I think that there are other players that are much more important to the future of Utah football.
Yeah, he's only a junior as well.
The interesting thing about it when I asked for this list is that how many of these lists don't have a quarterback on them? Now, if you had the right quarterback in your room right now, most people would say absolutely keep that guy. Brandon Rose is probably not on some of these lists because the assumption is, well, he's got to be here. He's injured. A Liz Frank, which I think is the injury, Liz Frank surgery means he's, we were told 6 to 8 months of rehab. If Brandon Rose is available to play next year, we'll see, but it's going to be he's available to play like Cam Rising was available last year. It's going to be a week-to-week thing, right? So I think that probably affects it. About half the lists have Isaac Wilson on them, and about half the lists don't have Isaac Wilson on them. When I'm asking you who are your most important players to retain for Utah football, if the true freshman quarterback had given you any cause to believe in him, he would be on every single one of your lists. He's only on about half. And those, I think, are the glass half full type Utah fans that see some of the passes, the touchdown passes that he threw, that see a couple of the plays in his 236-yard performance against Colorado, maybe look at his performance against Oklahoma State on the road. In context now, Oklahoma State, not that great of a team, but looking back on what we knew about Oklahoma State then, it was going to be a hostile environment. It was going to be unbelievably hot down there. There was going to be all these things that could be a distraction, could be a problem, and Isaac Wilson performed admirably in that game. Was not a world beater in that game. He hasn't been a world beater in any of these games yet. But again, as a true freshman, you move the goalposts a little and you say, was it good enough? Half of you seem to think yes, because I've put this question out there. Give me the top 10 Utes that you must retain for the 2025 roster. Tweet them at me at Real OC Sports. And about half of the lists coming in, and there's been several dozen lists so far, say that, yeah, bring him back. Tanu Vasa's on every list. Dijon Stanley is sprinkled in on some of these lists. That's an interesting one for me.
Yeah.
The Faunos right now, Smith Snowden, Cam Calhoun, and Keanu Tanuvasa are like the unanimous picks.
Yeah.
So extend this to what you heard Kyle Whittingham talking about in the press conference. We have a spreadsheet on how we want to distribute these funds.
Yeah.
The Fano brothers have a really interesting sort of negotiating position here because one of them already transferred from BYU.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was highly coveted by BYU, but ended up coming to Utah and was a big reason why his brother decided to come to Utah. Everything we've heard and everything we know about these guys at Utah, they love it here. They're not loving the results like nobody is, but these are guys that are like active in the community. They want to be doing some media stuff. They went down and did stuff with the hockey team. Whoever their agent is, by the way, is doing a great job.
Oh, 100%.
Of like sprinkling them around. They went down. I think they had like VIP treatment at the UFC card that was here. They did the hockey stuff. So whoever their agent is, congratulations, sir or ma'am. Whatever you're doing has been working for the Fanos. So the fact that it's both of them also adds a new layer to the onion, because as a coaching staff, you probably have to over-index on not only, look, they play an important position. Each of them play a very important position. Logan is a pass rusher. If we go by the NFL model of things, pass rushers are probably the third most important by salary and by draft position in the NFL, and there's no reason to treat college football any differently. It's quarterback number one. It's usually the guy who protects the quarterback number two, so offensive tackles, which of course is what Spencer plays, and then pass rushers. Those are what you use your top 3 draft picks on at the NFL level.
Usually.
That's what you're going to use your top 3 NIL/revenue sharing funds on in the college football game. So because the Fano brothers both play important positions, because they've both been identified as key talents that you cannot lose, and because they are brothers who probably seemingly want to stay together wherever they're at, they become a package deal, in my opinion. And that, I think, can make things even more difficult, because if you keep Spencer happy, for example, you say, all right, we're going to give you $1 million. Kyle Whittingham said there are tackles being paid $1 million. Just to use a round figure, he said $2 million actually. We're going to give Spencer Fano, because we think he's an eventual NFL draft pick. We think he's a foundational piece of an offensive line. We got to give him $1 million. Is Logan going to say, I would also like $1 million?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
And then you say, well, no, you're not quite as good or quite as important as your brother.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, okay, well, I'm his big brother, and you can't put me in a position where I'm not making as much money. This is all hypothetical, by the way. This is all just me pulling it out of you-know-where. The Fanos have not spoken to me about what they want. I don't know anything from their agent. This is just a hypothetical because, again, they're a package deal, which is a little bit more of an interesting situation, at least in my opinion. And because you want to retain both of them, I don't know if you can get a discount by saying, hey, you know what, we got both of you here, we're going to keep both of you here, or if it's going to be more expensive, because if you lose one, you might lose the other, so you have to overcompensate both. I think that's probably more likely for Utah. So now we're talking about, I'm hoping that Utah spends, $1.5 to $2 million at minimum on a quarterback, and now you're talking about you probably have to spend at least $1 million to keep the Fano brothers here. So now you're down about $3 million, and that's 3 players.
Yeah.
And you're talking about having to fill out 105 players on the roster total. They've changed the rules, so you're not going to have the 85 scholarships. You're going to have a roster limitation, and everyone's going to be on scholarship is what the rule change that has been proposed. That's what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. I now have to find a way, if it's $20 to $22 million of money, and I've already given away $3 million to what we think are important players, how much do I give Smith Snowden? Can't afford to lose him. You absolutely cannot afford to lose him. Now, he's not as important as a quarterback. He's not as important as your starting right or left tackle, but he's pretty dang close when we're talking about Utah football culture. We're talking about the identity of Utah football, what Utah football is supposed to be on a national front and on a Big 12 front and on a local front, a destination for great local players. You can't afford to lose Smith Snowden, because if you lose him, guess where you're going to lose him to? Brigham Young University, where his dad played.
Yep.
All of these things come into play. I've only gone down 4 players, and it's been a 20-minute discussion, all right? And we've got at least 6 more we got to get to. And then you've got another 90 on a roster that this coaching staff has to figure out.
Yeah.
And they don't have money for all of them. There's not enough money to pay every player, not at the University of Utah.
I have a hypothetical for you real quick.
Go for it.
Say we don't go after a quarterback in the transfer portal, right? We stick with Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose.
Okay.
Where would you focus on that position? Would it be receiver? Would it be running back? Would it be a defensive player? What would you focus on?
Well, if you're keeping Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose, you don't just get them for free, unfortunately.
No.
So by keeping them, you're paying $1 million now to Isaac Wilson?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me? That's a poll question that's going up.
Oh, welcome.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Are you willing to pay Isaac Wilson $1 million? Because there might be somebody out there, if you listen to the right people in the right circles, or maybe it's the wrong people in the wrong circles, depending on your lens on this one. There are people out there who think that Isaac Wilson has shown enough, those flashes of brilliance, those touchdowns over Travis Hunter to Dorian Singer. There's been enough of that on tape for Isaac Wilson that somebody out there at like Mississippi State might want his services. So you're going to pay to retain him? You don't have to pay Brandon Rose, not crazy money. You got to give him the truck. You got to give him like, I don't know, whatever, $50,000. There's not going to be a market for his services because he's coming off a very significant injury. That's an unfortunate reality for Brandon Rose. And also, are you willing to be that cutthroat of a personnel manager as a coach at the University of Utah?
Yeah.
Are you like the GM position? I think that Bobby Blecken is the guy who's going to be pretty important in making these decisions. Is he going to, when Brandon Rose walks in and says, hey, my family and I have discussed this, and you saw some good things from me, I have a good chance of being your starting quarterback this year, I want X number of dollars, are you going to look that kid in the face and just be like, we're actually not going to give you that because you don't have a better option?
Robert Blecken. You were close.
Yeah,
you said
Bobby is the same as Robert.
Oh, you're right.
Zach.
I'm.
Did you just correct me on Robert Blecken? Okay. Turn your mic off.
Okay.
In any case, like this whole, I thought this is an off-season discussion, but it's also what this coaching staff is talking about now, today, because the transfer portal opens in 3 weeks. And that means you have to make some of these decisions now, and you have a new revenue distribution model that has never been part of your reality before. So Kyle Whittingham told us in the press conference that he's got these spreadsheets, and I need to see them. I don't want to see them. I need to see them because I want to know where the quarterback number is, where the number next to Smith Snowden's name is, where the number next to Cam Calhoun's name is. And guess what? That's only 2 corners, and you got to have at least 5 good ones on your roster. So what's the number next to the cornerback position? Maybe we can do this. Maybe we could do this as an exercise as a host and as all of you out there listening. Right now, the homework assignment, though, is give me the list of players that Utah football cannot, under any circumstances, afford to lose when the transfer portal opens. The guys you have to retain. We'll get to how many you add and how much you pay them and all that stuff another day. Who can you not afford to lose off this Utah football team that is having its worst year since 2002? It's on its longest losing streak since then. In the lifetime of these players, they have never seen Utah football in these dire straits. Before we take a break and come back with Isaac Asiata, we had to call an audible. It was supposed to be Scott Mitchell. We're going to talk with Isaac Asiata instead. He'll have some thoughts on how much you should pay a guy like Spencer Fano. But before we get there, quick reminder to all of you, now is the right time of year to be getting your photography set up for those Christmas cards. And when you're getting ready to print those Christmas cards, the only place you need to go is Postnet. Postnet.com. Check out all the deals they've got going on for you now. Or better yet, walk in Draper, in North Salt Lake, in Spanish Fork, in West Valley. They will print your cards for you. They will send those cards for you. They will make sure they get to every single relative, every single friend, every single business associate that you owe a Christmas card to. And they will make sure it is done timely. They will make sure it is done right. They will make sure it is done not right, perfectly, because that's what they pride themselves on, customer service. Tell my friends at Postnet that OC sent you. Dependable solutions, and ask them about virtual mail while you're there in Draper, North Salt Lake, Spanish Fork, or West Valley. Postnet.com for more information. Isaac Asiata joins us next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday. Time now to check in with a Utah Football Insider brought to you by Metro Elevator. Needs no introduction. One of the all-time greats playing the offensive line position at the University of Utah, Isaac Asiata, Morris Trophy winner, which is one of the most impressive things you can do in sport is you can get your peers, the opponents that you dominated all year, to vote on giving you an award. This man did so as a Pac-12 offensive lineman. Isaac Asiata, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you?
What's up, brother? It's good to be here.
It's great to have you. So what's it like for an alum, someone who has stayed close to this program, knows a lot of the guys on the coaching staff, a lot of the guys on the roster, a lot of the guys in the recruiting picture, just everywhere. What's it been like for you watching this season unfold? It's obviously been a disaster in the win-loss column, but how has it felt?
Honestly, my heart just breaks. You know what? As a former player, before I went and coached there, like there's a feeling of pride in the sense of, hey man, I played there. Like, why are we losing? Why is the program not doing good? Or you're celebrating? But after you coach there and you get to know the guys on the roster, and then you do what the coaches do, you get a better understanding and a better appreciation for how much work goes into it. And so now it's more heartbreaking for me. Like, I feel for the guys who are playing, and I feel for the coaching staff because I know how much time they put in. And the best way that I can feel, I'm just heartbroken for the guys. I know that this is not the outcome that they were wanting this season.
Now, it's interesting because the Kyle Whittingham press conference today, normally in a season that's going as planned, right, he's focused on, hey, it's week to week. No big picture stuff. It's about what happened last week against Colorado. It's about what's happening next week against Iowa State. Because of, I think, the way that this year has gone, a lot of the questions coming his way and even some of his responses are more big picture stuff because clearly there's been a shift. Now, I am not one who believes that, this is a norm for Utah football moving forward. I think this is a bit of a fluke year, once again, with the bad injuries and all that situation. But there is a question about whether or not a program that has relied so heavily on finding the undiscovered talents, developing the undiscovered talents, whether you can still do it that way in modern college football, because now that undiscovered talent can have one great year at Utah and get paid a bunch of money to go somewhere else. There's a lot of scenarios that could unfold there, but I guess the broader question I'm asking you is, can they still do it the way they did it when you were a player, where they can take an Isaac Asiata who had opportunities elsewhere but wanted to be a Ute and keep him there and develop him into being an NFL player?
It's kind of a mixed bag. I can say yes and no. NIL has changed the game so much, and it can bring out the worst in players. It can also bring out the best in players. I think it's harder nowadays to do it like they used to do, where they get these blue-collar, these 2-3-star guys who are kind of flying under the radar, but the coaching staff did a good job in recruiting these diamonds in the rough and developing them. But just like you said, when money's involved, it's kind of hard for somebody to want to stay around. And in my opinion, how you combat something like that is the culture, is recruiting the right guy that fits the culture of the program. Somebody who's like, there's other teams offering me a lot of money, but I want to make it work here. I want to do it here. These guys believed in me. I love this place, and I want to see this program succeed more than I want to see my own success or my own financial gain. But those players are very hard to find nowadays, and I think you still can. I just don't think you're going to have a full roster full of guys like that.
Isaac Asiata is my guest here, talking some Utah football on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We were discussing the offensive line and how you prioritize in this era of college football's NIL and transfer portals, how you prioritize, building along the offensive line. Now, Utah has been a run-first team for a long time, but you also have to protect the quarterback. You have to decide who that quarterback's going to be. They've got two young tackles right now that I think are very, very promising. The interior of the offensive line is a little bit more experienced, but they put you back on this coaching staff and they say, all right, Isaac, we got $22 million to distribute among the whole roster of starters. How much of a percentage should we give to the offensive line? What's your answer to that question?
That's a loaded question because I'm biased, and I think that all 22 million should go to the O-line. But
you can't have all 22.
Yeah, you can't have all. I understand you can't have all 22. In my opinion, what I would try to do is you need to have, like, a ballpark for me would be anywhere between 4 to 6 million, and it goes to the O-line. I think it's a fair assessment, and you obviously start with your tackles, and after your tackles are looked at, it has to be your center, and your guards are essentially. It sucks, but because I played guard, but your guard's kind of last. Your guard's kind of the jack of all trades. He needs to be able to either be a swing tackle or a swing center, and those guys don't really get paid much. Just like I didn't get paid much, but that'd be my ballpark. I feel like the max around 6 million would be fair to spend on an offensive line between the 5 guys, but can't have it all.
You got to make these decisions at some level, and Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley are going to be making these decisions together for the foreseeable future, and who knows whether it's Morgan next year or Coach Witt comes back for one more ride or 2 more rides. I don't think it's longer than that. I asked him at Big 12 Media Days if he's going to be around in 2027 because a Utah-Miami game had been announced, and he laughed at me for thinking he might be there. So I think that's my hard line. I don't think he's here longer than that. You know the man better than I do. You played for him for a long time. Do you think a bad and disappointing year in 2024 makes it more or less likely that Kyle Whittingham walks away after this season is over? Because part of me has a hard time thinking he would ride out with this being kind of the final stamp he puts on the football team. But the other part of me looks at how fed up he seems to be, how hard it is to adjust to some of these changes, and saying, he might just realize now's the right time. Where do you stand?
I find it hard to believe that with the competitor that he is, the kind of guy that he is, that he would end it on a season like this. But I also, I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know his head, but if it's something where he feels that it's better for the program for him to step away, I know he would do something like that. That's the kind of selfless guy he is. If he feels that, Scally taking over next year would benefit the program overall, I know he wouldn't just come back just for an ego thing or for his own pride. But I do find it very hard to believe that after, the season they're having now, that he would want to call it on this kind of a season.
There's been a lot of conversation about morale and culture in a rough stretch like this and in a season that has been so disappointing. And, we have Mekhi Bernard on the show every week, and he says all the right things, and you see him play, and he plays the right way. And I look at a guy like that, and I say, you know what? I know he's not a problem, and he's a captain on this team, and hopefully he's able to kind of extend his own views on things to the rest of the roster. But you served in a captain's role on this Utah football team and never went through a stretch quite this bad. But when it starts to get a little bit sour, take me inside what the locker room is really like and how, as a leader, how as a captain, you can try and hold things together when maybe the coaching staff is not able to.
I think that's the importance of having the right guys and the right roles in the locker room is, I think about the 2013 season when we went 5-7 and Trevor Riley getting after the team. I remember there's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of, it's not my fault. I'm doing my job. It's your fault. You're not doing your job. Where you think you're being accountable, but really you're not. You're supposed to be uplifting. And it's important for guys like Mekhi, Junior Tafuna, Corrine Reed. It's important for guys like that to squash everything at the lowest level, and they have to epitomize what it means to to get the outcome of what they're trying to do, because these guys, they voted these guys, they picked these guys. These are the guys that they're going to follow their example. And it's hard when you're in a losing season because you don't feel like you're really playing for anything. But it's at the end of the day, when you're having a season like this, I remember Trevor Riley told us that we're not playing for a bowl game anymore. We're not playing for the coaching staff. We're playing for each other. And that was it. It's the mentality and the understanding that, like, hey, we're not, like, the season's essentially over, but we're not going to quit just because we aren't going to a bowl game. Now we're playing because of all the hard work that it took to get to here over the last year, to not let each other down. And it's hard to do that, but it's the way that you have to do things. You have to keep the guys together and keep the morale going. Otherwise, you get more toxicity, guys giving up. And I don't feel that when I've been around the team. It's pretty positive in the locker room, and the guys are really they're really great. They're just not happy with the way things are going, and that's understandable. But just making sure that everybody is sticking together and riding it out for each other.
You know, these discussions, forgive me, but these last 6 weeks, really 8 weeks because of the 2 bye weeks, they've felt like Groundhog Day, where I'm trying to provide context and maybe offer solutions. And now I've turned the page, and the rest of this year, hopefully good things happen. But really, for me now, it's all about next year. And as I turn the focus to next year, I don't want to come to the conclusion that money is now going to be the driving force behind whether or not Utah remains a formidable team and remains a consistent top 25 team and is always at the top of the discussion for Big 12 championships. I don't want it to be a money thing. I fear that maybe it is beyond money, because we've already had the money conversation. What can this Utah football team do to get back to the ways that we expect from them?
I think one of the biggest things that they need to do is the guys who come back next year, the guys who, we're going to have some dudes leave. We got a lot of older players who are leaving the program, and it's going to be up to those sophomore juniors who are going to be going up to the next class, of them deciding what they want the team to be like. And you need to get the right dudes in the right position in order for everybody to rise to the standard that they set. Because it can't be, Coach Witt is big about this, it can't be the coaches. Like, the coaches, their job is to get you ready and put you in the best position to succeed. Your job is to love each other, execute the plays, and give everything that you've got. And the leaders on the team have to be the right guys. A lot of times you'll see it's almost like a popularity contest. The guy who, whoever gets voted, it's, oh yeah, everybody likes this guy. I'm a new guy here. I don't know who this is. It's like, no, the leaders are the ones who call you out when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And they epitomize that role. And it really comes down to who's going to be the leaders and how are they going to set the standard and make everybody live to that standard.
Isaac, appreciate your time and your insights. One of the all-time greats. The governor, I called you when you were a player. I said you were the future governor of Utah. Are we any closer to that? I mean, when are you going to make a political run here?
I think the highest political run I'll probably ever make is, chief of police someday. I don't know. I don't know about governor anymore. I used to love that nickname, but politics aren't for me, man.
Well, that's why I want you in it, because you're not a political type guy. You're just an awesome dude who I think would make some good decisions for all of us. So don't rule it out. I'll vote for you whenever it happens, all right?
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate you, brother.
Isaac Asiata, Utah football insider, former team captain, Morris Trophy winner. I will never let that one die because it is one of the most impressive awards you can ever attain in football. For those of you who don't know, the Morris Trophy is given to the best offensive lineman and defensive lineman in the Pac-12, the now defunct Pac-12, every single year. But it was not handed out by coaches. It was not handed out by media. The opposing teams, your peers, the guys you played against, the guys you blocked, or the guys that you made it impossible for them to block you. That's who voted on the Morris Trophy. And those guys said Isaac Asiata was the best offensive lineman in the Pac-12 Conference. That's impressive. Not the only Ute to win the Morris Trophy, by the way. All right, that's part of our Big 12 at noon coverage brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. Visit them at mountainlandsupply.com. And don't forget that this is the right time of year to help out Utah's homeless. You can donate unwrapped gifts at Cole West up there in Centerville, or you can go to Utah First Credit Union's now through November 30th. So you're running out of time. You have 12 more days to donate to the Candy Cane Corner, benefiting families at Road Home and Volunteers of America. ESPN700sports.com for more details. All this made possible with support from Utah First Credit Union and from Cole West. It was a wild weekend in combat sports. We'll talk about Friday night, the Mike Tyson situation, and the greatest fighter of all time was in action at Madison Square Garden on Saturday night. We'll discuss that as well. You're listening to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. All right, Pete Futak's going to join me at the top of hour number 3. Pete, one of the best college football insiders in the entire country. Looking forward to having a conversation with him. That's coming up here in about 10 minutes. I wanted to take a brief, tiny little bit of time to discuss what happened in combat sports this past weekend. Netflix on Friday night streamed a boxing card that was capped off by a main event between 58-year-old Mike Tyson and 27-year-old social media combat crossover star Jake Paul. I am embarrassed to say that I watched it. I watched, more importantly, the co-main event between Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. That was a great fight between two legit, high-level, championship-level women's boxers. It was an absolute treat of a fight. Incredible performance by both women. I thought Serrano should have got the decision victory. Katie Taylor gets the win. I think we got a trilogy fight coming eventually there. But really, it was all about Netflix's foray into live sporting events and the return of Mike Tyson. And Netflix numbers came out, and they said it peaked at about 60 million viewers.
Holy cow.
I think 65 actually was the peak number, but it averaged 60 million viewers, which is nuts. I mean, that is insane. I don't know, like the next time we see Jake Paul fight, it won't draw that kind of a number. But this is such a massive victory for live sporting events to stream like that, to not be offered as a pay-per-view appendage on Netflix, but to just like tune in and you can see a freak show, because it was a freak show. It went exactly how we thought it was going to go. Mike Tyson is 58 years old, and so Mike Tyson was never going to be able to beat a 27-year-old who's been dedicating his life to boxing for the last 3 or 4 years. Jake Paul is not good enough to hurt Mike Tyson at this point. He's not good enough to knock him out, so you knew that probably wasn't going to happen.
No.
And so you got what you got, and you watched the first 3 rounds with this like futile hope that Mike Tyson would uncork some crazy uppercut or a crazy hook and stop the problem child, and that was never a realistic possibility, and so it didn't happen. And then you watched rounds 3 through 10, and or 3 through 8, and we're just like, this kind of sucks now. This is not fun to watch. And look, Mike Tyson put out a statement. He felt like it was a win. He lasted the whole time, and he's 58 years old, and he made $20 million, and Jake Paul made double that at least. And it's a commentary on where we're at right now with these spectacle events. I don't care if you like the spectacle events. I'm guilty of watching the whole thing. It's fine. We watched it. Okay. Good job. Congratulations to Jake Paul. Everything the dude touches turns into more money for him. I wish I had that superpower myself. Then on Saturday night, there was a much more relevant and much more salient combat sports event happening. And it was a UFC pay-per-view, UFC 309 at Madison Square Garden. John Jones, the greatest mixed martial arts fighter of all time. He's moved up to the heavyweight division. Most of his career he spent at light heavyweight. His last fight, he demolished an interim champion at heavyweight, gained the heavyweight belt, and he was taking on Stipe Miocic, who's been away from the sport for 3 years, but is the most decorated heavyweight champion in UFC history. And John Jones made him look like he doesn't know how to fight. John Jones once again proved that he is absolutely the GOAT. He's unbelievably talented. He went through and he put in all the work necessary, executed a perfect game plan. And if you paid attention to the post-fight stuff, he finished the fight with a spinning back kick into the ribs of Stipe Miocic. And he talked about how he trained that specific kick with a Taekwondo coach who is separate from his regular coaching team. With a Taekwondo coach, he worked on that kick specifically for 3 hours a week for the last several months. And he was able to execute it, and he was able to retain his heavyweight belt and further cement his status. Maybe we get 1 or 2 more fights from John Jones. That's a conversation for another day. But he's going to go down as the best to ever do it. He's never actually lost. The only loss on his record was a disqualification for throwing an elbow that is not now it's no longer illegal. It is now a legal elbow. When he threw it, It was called a 12-6. I'm not going to bore any of you non-fight fans out there with the details of something like that. But one day apart from one another, you had a YouTuber fighting a 58-year-old where 65 million people tuned in. The next day, you had the greatest combat sports athlete of our generation fighting, admittedly on pay-per-view at an exorbitant price. So that, of course, is going to cut down the viewership. But there was more interest and more conversation and more investment in the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul from a pop culture and a sporting standpoint, a casual sporting standpoint, than there was in an actual competition.
Yeah, and this just came out from ESPN like 2 hours ago. The Mike Tyson Jake Paul was most heavily wagered fight in BetMGM's history. I wonder if Jeff Schwartz was part of that.
It's the most heavily wagered fight. So more people bet on that, which was damn near a setup, than on anything else.
I know my dad bet on it too. He took Mike Tyson plus 1,000.
Okay, so your dad should have called me, and I could have saved him whatever money he bet on this thing. Mike Tyson had no chance in this fight. It was set up because he had no chance in this fight.
He still got paid, though.
He still got paid. And anyone, like, easiest money you could make, just putting money on Jake Paul, especially by decision, because the fight fixing, that's a strong accusation to make. But as close as you can do to fixing it is putting a 27-year-old against a 58-year-old.
Yeah.
And then telling that 27-year-old probably, like, hey, don't knock him out, or telling the 58-year-old, like, hey, we got to make this a long fight so people feel like Netflix feels like they got their money's worth. I don't know if those conversations were happening, but I know enough about the way that these, like, pseudo sport events have gone down. This is not the first Jake Paul fight that I've tuned into, embarrassingly. I personally know a guy who's fought him twice, and let's just say that there's some tomfoolery and some chicanery happening behind the scenes when these are involved. So, like, Netflix and MVP promotions and whatever, they decided to capitalize on the curiosity of really people your dad's age, people my age, being like, hey, can Mike Tyson actually do it? And the answer was always no. It was never going to be anything but no. But because this is what we did when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather. The MMA fans were just like, please, 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 let my guy land a big punch. It was always going to be no.
Remember who won that fight?
Zach, what does it say about our society, about our sports society? Because I'm not going to blame this on people who don't care about sports at all. That a legitimate heavyweight title fight one day after this farce probably got at best 10% of the viewers. At best.
Yeah.
What does it say about our society? What does it say about it? Does it say anything? It's a real question. It might not say anything. It might
not.
It might just be like, hey, we like watching Evel Knievel jump over the Grand Canyon on a motorcycle too. It doesn't mean anything about our love for real sports, but I just don't know what it means.
I don't either. It's a tough question to answer, and I think it should be researched a lot more.
And good for Mike Tyson. It was a little sad watching him try to move around. His legs were gone because he's 58. Yeah, and we knew that was going to be the case. But he made $20 million, and he got to go out there in front of a sold-out Jerry World, or a heavily packed Jerry World at least, and once again proved to the world that he is a major showman. He is a major draw. Like Jake Paul versus anyone else on the planet doesn't do 65 million viewers.
No.
It doesn't. Like Jake Paul versus, he wants to fight Canelo, who's a legitimate, like, championship caliber, actual active boxer. If that fight ends up happening, he doesn't, like Canelo, as great as he is, doesn't have the cultural cachet of a Mike Tyson. So that fight won't bring that kind of viewership.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
It's just wild to think about.
It is.
All right. That's all I don't. That's like 12 minutes on combat sports. I know people get a little bit up in arms, but that's what we're doing today. The show today is brought to you by Canyon Dead Sports Pub down there on Holiday. The place to be on any game day. Delicious food, drinks, a lively atmosphere, and you get to watch every play on the many big screens all around the pub and bar. Just can't beat it. Go to Canyon's Edge. Tell them OC sent you. Pete Futak's going to join us next, College Football Insider. We'll talk about BYU's first loss of the season, where Utah goes from here, and, of course, whether or not the Colorado Buffaloes are now the favorite in the Big 12 Conference. Pete Futak in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. It was an eventful weekend in college football locally, nationally, everywhere. Joining me to talk about all of it, Pete Futak, College Football News, a regular guest on my Pac-12 show, and for the first time now on the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Pete, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. How you doing this Monday?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day in Salt Lake City. We got some snow coming this week, I think. Nothing to complain about. Except
that's to complain. I complain about that. That's awful.
Except maybe we could complain about Utah football. It has been a really, really rough season for the fans to watch, for the players to play, for the coaches to coach. And, we haven't had a chance to catch up on it. So when you outside looking in, what do you think's really gone wrong with Utah football, big picture?
It never got the quarterback situation right. And they just sort of got away from, what this program is. And it's been a couple of years. I mean, it was last year, too. I mean, I'm not going to blame it on, Cam Rising not being, healthy or anything, but it wasn't able to adapt and just be Utah. I mean, the lines were still great. The defense is still really good. Everything was in place, but just there's just no offensive kick there. So you can only do so much when, the defense is doing its job. The running game was just never pounding away enough, and they just never got consistency at quarterback where, all the injuries, I mean, that just sort of added up for a while. But it is just a bizarre year where, look at the rest of the Big 12. I mean, right now, if before the season, who are the four best teams? It was, Utah definitely, Arizona, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. And three of those teams aren't going to go bowling. And you've got, the BYUs and Arizona States of the world. They're right knee-deep in it. So just a combination of everyone in the conference is good enough to beat everyone else. There isn't a true dog in the conference. So Utah just sort of had that and a bunch of bad luck and a bad call, penalty call here and there. And it's just been a rough year, obviously.
This everyone can beat everyone thing is something that plagued the Pac-12 conference, and it was so frustrating to sometimes have to be an apologist for it. And here we are again in the Big 12 with exactly that, as you just mentioned. We're getting down to a time where, Colorado seems like they're playing the best football. None of us expected that. Arizona State has BYU this weekend and could find themselves controlling their own destiny for a Big 12 championship game. And, of course, if you can win a Big 12 championship game, you're off to a college football playoff most likely. So when you see what Arizona State has done, when you see what Colorado has done, and what BYU has done, all surprise teams, how and why do you think that these are the teams at the top?
One, the Big 12 is awful. So let's start with that. I mean, yes, everyone can be there. There's a whole bucket of reality coming to breakfast for whoever that 3 or 4 seed Big 12 champion is going to be once the college football playoff kicks in. It's everyone's just okay. Everyone's pretty good, but there's no one who's great. I mean, remember, Colorado got housed by Nebraska. So it's kicking for Nebraska for Colorado. So Colorado, they're still not keeping Shedeur Sanders from getting popped. But the lines have been better. The defense is far better than it was last year. And, that offense does work. It is, give Coach Prime credit. I mean, he's got the guy who should be the number one pick in the draft running the thing. And they've got the offensive weapons where boom, boom, boom. But even Colorado, for all this, fun, and they are playing pretty well right now. Remember, they needed that last second play to get by Baylor. They've needed a couple of close wins, but they've, give them the credit. They've got the mettle and they've got the toughness where I think it's kind of been overlooked at just how, tough, both mentally and physically, this program has been over the last several months, especially after last year. So they're playing well. Arizona State, same sort of thing. Last year it started under Kenny Dillingham where even when they were getting rocked, they played hard all game. I mean, they were in the midst of a miserable season, had nothing to play for at the end, and they just kept out and kept fighting and battling. And there's an energy there because I think Dillingham's 14 years old, and he seems like he's got that fire and spirit. So it carried over. They're just beating people up on the line. So it's just kind of doing what Utah had done for years in the Pac-12, is just getting more physical. Colorado's still not a steamroller, but they got tougher. And Arizona State's been able to get it done by pounding away with Scatterbo. So it's just they found the right mix, the right thing, and again a little bit of momentum play here.
So BYU's still very much in the mix. They're a one-loss team now. The rankings, I think, are going to be pretty punitive for that Kansas loss, and it makes sense why they would be. I look at BYU, and one of the things that fascinated me as they were still undefeated was there's not like one star player on this team. I don't know how much BYU you've been able to watch, but they don't have a statistical outlier in any category. They don't have a top tackler. They don't have a top sack man. They don't have a top rusher, a top receiver. It's just like everyone was really good, and now they lost, and now they're underdogs against Arizona State. And like I said with the rankings, I think people are like, aha, this is where they come back to earth. Is that what you expect to happen to a BYU team because they don't have a Shedeur Sanders to like make them right when everything else goes wrong?
And that goes to the team. What do they do well? I mean, it's really kind of crazy because it doesn't seem like it should fit, except for the idea that they just sort of win. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, something to be said for kind of having a mature team that knows how to just kind of just not freak out when everything starts to kind of, go wrong. And obviously that was the end of the Utah game. I mean, Kansas was way overdue. Kansas, that's what we call a market correction because that team kept losing games close, but they kept playing well. And BYU just happened to get them when everything kind of went right. So the rankings will reflect that in the college football playoff rankings, and it kind of doesn't matter. The Big 12 is a one-bid conference. The champion's going to get in, and no one else will. So if you're BYU, okay, that stunk. You lost to Kansas, but just win your last couple games, and you're in the Big 12 championship. And like you said, whether it's BYU, whether it's Colorado, whether it's Arizona State, whoever's getting into that Big 12 championship, that's a playoff game. That's where it all starts. So while who cares about those whatever the college football playoff rankings are going to be, that matters for the SEC pecking order. That matters a little bit for the Big 10, but not really. For the Big 12, it's you got just win the Big 12 conference and you're in. That's it.
I still think that the Heisman Trophy winner should come from the Big 12 conference, even if I don't disagree with you, even if they have no great team and probably won't do anything in the college football playoff. Travis Hunter's got to win this thing, right?
I don't know. I'm a voter. It's fine. He doesn't do it for me. I'm not there like everyone else is. I realize how good he is. I realize that he's just an amazing all-around talent. But the Heisman is like, who's the guy? Who is the player this season?
Yes, it's Travis Hunter, Pete. It's Travis Hunter. He's an All-American on both sides of the ball.
So, I mean, are they? I mean, to me, the problem with this is, are they going to win a national title because they have Travis Hunter? No. Shedeur Sanders is the best player on that team. I know Coach Prime thinks his own son is, and it is Hunter. So I'm going against Dion against his own kid. But Shedeur Sanders is the guy. I mean, you take Shedeur Sanders off that team and forget it. I kind of see the Heisman in my own pretentious way of being just a combination of, the MVP, the MOP, all of that sort of stuff. I mean, like last year it was Jaden Daniels. He was the signature guy and all that. But I made a case at least that Jalen Milroe deserved to be a part of this. And, it's this year. Just wait. We still have conference championships to go. We still have other parts to this thing. I mean, yes, Travis Hunter has been fantastic. I'm not dogging him. That's probably, certainly he'll be on the ballot and all that sort of thing. But he's more of a creation of, there's no one else. I mean, is it Dylan Gabriel? No. Is it Cam Ward? No. So who is it? And I still kind of think Jalen, we're kind of, the world for some reason, for him being the Bama quarterback, is just completely blowing off how good Jalen Milroe is and what he's meant to this season. And so let's see over the last couple of weeks, if Alabama gets through this and they get to the SEC championship and they win it, Jalen Milroe is the signature player of college football this year.
Have you ever seen a great running back in college football before?
Yeah, I will tell you this. Not only did I see a great running back, I'm going to say I'm the only person still alive who saw the great running back. My former stepdad back in the day had one of those gigantic satellite dishes, like literally the 15-foot satellite dishes in the backyard that got us to watch Oklahoma State games in 1988 after Barry Sanders started to kick in. It was really way back in the day. So I was like one of the few people who actually remember actually seeing Barry Sanders do that back in 1988. And I went to Wisconsin, during just before the Ron Dayne era kicked in and saw all those games. So I've seen a couple good backs. Yeah.
Okay, and you've seen great running backs and you've seen great quarterbacks, but you've never seen someone who's even an all-conference player on offense and on defense in the same year who plays 130 snaps a game.
I guess, but here's the difference. It's my Charles Woodson argument, where Charles Woodson, there's no argument for Peyton Manning over Charles Woodson in that Heisman debate. Because that year, Charles Woodson, you could point to 5 plays. Actually, you can point to 3 plays, 5 plays. You can point to specific plays that Michigan went on to win the national championship because Charles Woodson made these plays. You can't do that with Travis Hunter. He's good, but that's kind of what the NFL draft is for. He's great. I mean, I'm not dogging him, but I mean, like in the Heisman, like, okay, he's an amazing player. Ashton Janty's been, putting up ridiculous numbers too. And he's going to get his team to the college football playoff. Can you name the one play that Travis Hunter has made that said, yeah, Colorado might win the Big 12 championship because of this play by Travis Hunter?
You're right. There's probably more plays by Shedeur Sanders that allow them. But
Shedeur Sanders is the key to that team.
But it's also not the Heisman is not a team award. In the year that Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy, who did you vote for?
Lamar Jackson. He was awesome. Actually, no, I can't remember that one. I think I did because he was great, but he died down the stretch. There was someone else who was there. I did not vote for Johnny Manziel, even though that year. But I've been pretty good about this. I've had 1 or 2 years where I was just after the fact was way off. I remember. I think I voted for Deshaun Watson because Deshaun Watson was amazing that year, and they ended up winning the national championship because of it. So in sort of that way, even though Lamar Jackson was amazing, and then there's no dog in that. So again, the problem with this argument is I'm not ripping on Travis Hunter. He's great, but fine. I mean, what's he doing that's making? Obviously, he's doing great things for Colorado, but what's he doing? Is Colorado going to play for the national championship? If you took Travis Hunter off of Colorado, where are they this year? They're probably close to the same spot. Maybe not, but again, he's really good. But the other problem is, again, my problem is if not Travis Hunter, then who else? And my other problem with that is I'm not crazy in my own head thinking, Shedeur Sanders is the more valuable, more important player.
I don't ask you those things to be argumentative. It is good to get into the thought process, especially of someone who's an actual voter. As we talked to Pete Futak, College Football News, National College Football Insider here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Staying on the Colorado thing, where does Deion Sanders coach next year, if he is coaching next year?
Oh, man, I can tell you this from an inside perspective. The people who run Colorado websites and things, everyone's eating off this because there is no bigger SEO search term than Deion Sanders. He's great. Look, I mean, I know that it gets kind of lost in all the hype and all the craziness and everything. He's good at this. He's a good football coach. He's worked the problem. And I think because of all the hype, because of all the fanfare and everything, it gets lost that, last year, they collapsed down the stretch. Oh, ha, 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 look at that. Yeah, but look where Colorado was the year before that and for 15 years before that. This program was nothing. I mean, they couldn't win anything. And what did they do? They improved last year. They didn't go to a bowl game. They didn't win the Pac-12, but they improved in year 1 under Coach Prime. So year 2 under this is where you're supposed to take a bit of a step, and they've taken a big step, in how this has all worked. So he did it immediately. I mean, I was all for the idea of get rid of bad players, bring in good players. That's the dream of every college football fan or any fan of any team, is that you get a guy in who makes your team instantly good. I don't want to go there yet with saying that Florida State is obviously the place for him, but he's got a groove there. He's got a good thing going there. He seems to like it. it's not like he's missing out on the national spotlight or the endorsements. It's not like he needs like a pro guy who needs to be in New York or LA or something like this. He's certainly doing just fine in Colorado. It's a beautiful place. He seems to be pretty good there. I don't know, how much more money or where else he would rather be going if it's not Florida State.
I kind of agree with you there. I think that the idea of if he could end up on a pro situation where he might get to coach his own kids, but I don't know how you make that happen.
Yeah, that NFL is such a different animal. I mean, because part of being Coach Prime and Deion Sanders is the ability to recruit. It is him being Deion Sanders, and the ability, from an X and O standpoint. Sure, okay, he's doing a great. He and the staff are doing a great job. They've got a system that works. But really, why he's so much better as a college coach than he would be in pros. The NFL, you're just at the dumb luck of who'd you get in the draft, as opposed to his real talent. Among all else, is just being the face of the franchise and being him and being the guy who everyone just wants to play for. And that's where some of these guys they have that certain skill, and there's no one who's better at recruiting, especially in an NIL era, than Deion Sanders is right now.
You bring me to the NIL era with the transfer portal opening in December 9th. So in about 3 weeks, we got this thing coming. And look, it's funny because here in Salt Lake City, people have already kind of turned the page to the what's next, since this season is such a wash with 2 games left to play. But it is what it is. And you've got a new era coming in college football where there's going to be revenue sharing as well. So you've got NIL, transfer portal, revenue sharing, and a lot of hand-wringing over a team like the University of Utah that has kind of built its most successful years on everything that is outside of that new system. It's been on identifying talent and developing it. It's been on keeping guys in the program as freshmen and sophomores, and then they finally get to see the field as a junior, and then as a senior they really break out. And it just feels like it's kind of a bygone era in college football in some respects. So can Utah still compete if they can't all the way adapt and they can't quite keep up with the rest of the Big 12 and not even with BYU potentially financially? If that's a reality for them, can Utah be what Utah football nationally has become in the last decade or so? Oh,
yeah. It's because there's a way to do this where just talking about Colorado, which is the antithesis to all this, where I still think at the end of the day, you still need to build up. You still need the foundation. And Colorado's been good, got good really fast, but you still need to be able to have the guys who, you recruit the 145-pound kid who you build up into a 285-pound left tackle. You just need those guys who take 3 or 4 years. And then the key is keeping them around. Because if you're Utah, you're not getting the Johnny 5-stars walking in there to begin with. You already have kind of the system. So you still keep everything going. You still keep the infrastructure. And for a program like Utah, it's not about making, going out there and going to Ohio State and have a $20 million payroll for coaches and players and, get all these 5-star guys, whoever you want from across the country. It's really more about getting the final pieces. And the programs that do this best going forward are going to be the ones that have the infrastructure where you build the line. You do what Utah has done over the last several years, and you have just great offensive and defensive fronts, and then you go find your quarterback somewhere else. You go find, your left corner, your some, deep safety, whoever it is, whatever position you're missing, that's where you go and pick and choose and do that sort of thing. And the other part of this thing too is see if Clemson wins the ACC championship this year. I mean, they're not going to win the national title because they're missing those guys. But look, Dabo has done this by kind of doing the exact opposite and being like, you come here to Clemson. We're not going to go looking for your replacement. We're not going to look for the transfer portal. There's no pressure here. We're going to try to develop you. You're part of our family, part of our group. And it's just a more like we're going to turn you into a great player here. Go ahead and make mistakes. It's fine. We're not, even if you're down on the depth chart, you're still going to get your chances. And he's got a way of doing this where it's taken that NIL pressure off, where that's been a problem because they've desperately needed that extra wide receiver and that extra one cornerback away from being elite. But there are different methods to doing this in an NIL era. So there's Colorado, there's Clemson, and there's somewhere in between of that.
I'm sure we'll have you on again before the college football playoff and all this. So you get to revise your answers every time we talk. But it is November 18th, 2024. Pete Futak thinks that blank will win the national championship this year.
Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia, one of the at the end of the day, Ohio State and Georgia are the two best teams. They have the most talent, they have the best coaches, they have all the NFL guys, they have the depth, they have just the wherewithal. Everything is there. There's no reason why Ohio State and Georgia should not be playing for the national championship. Now, Georgia's not playing like it. Georgia's been struggling. They haven't been playing up to that. But I think there's going to be a switch that gets flipped when the playoff time hits, and it's all of a sudden it's like this is why they're there. They're like that an NBA team full of stars, and it's like mid-December, and you're like, all right, let's just get there already. And they don't care if they're a 5 seed or not. Just get us into this playoff, and watch out. Then we're going to get rolling already. That's those two teams. I think a step below those two. Oregon's good, but there's still a little bit something missing there in terms of the overall pop. And they're going to be right in the mix. They'll probably make the Final Four and all that, but they're below that. Alabama's right there too. So if I had to handicap this, Ohio State and then whoever comes away from Georgia, Alabama somehow in that mix, there's your national champion.
So does the fairy tale for Indiana end this weekend with the Ohio State game?
Well, it ended in a certain way. They're going to make the college football playoffs. They're going to destroy Purdue. They're going to be 11-1, and they get the sweet spot. It's actually the crazy part about how this thing is set up is you're actually the loser on a high-rent district loser is the team that loses the conference championship. Because if you're, BYU or Colorado or Arizona State, you're out. But at a different level, if you are, let's say, Oregon, Ohio State, and you lose the Big Ten championship, well, not only do you lose the championship, but you get that extra game and you don't get the time off to rest. Indiana, Notre Dame, Penn State, they're all going to be 11-1, and they're going to get 3 full weeks off and a home game playoff. And so their 13th game is going to be the first round of the playoff where, look, you got to get in it anyway and beat teams. Might as well be then rather than have that one extra game. So I do think Indiana loses, but look, it's Indiana. I mean, if they lose to Ohio State 65-0, it doesn't matter. It's Ohio State. They're just better than everyone else. But for Indiana, they've never had a season like this before. So everything here is gravy. They're going to destroy Purdue by 80, and they're going to be 11-1 and probably be like the 8th seed in the college football playoff.
What do you think happens with Army?
Can Notre Dame hit the knuckleball? I mean, they're good, but that's a team that's played nobody. I think they still have not beaten a team that's going to go bowling. I think maybe they beat North Texas. I think it's the one, but they haven't beat anybody yet. And Notre Dame, I think I talked about Ohio State and those other teams before. No one's playing better than Notre Dame. Notre Dame, everyone has blown them off because of the Northern Illinois loss, which was just a total coaching meltdown blip, a dumb game plan. But they're great. I mean, I think they are legitimately really, really good. I think Notre Dame just sort of blocks and tackles just a little bit better, and that defense is playing so well, and they just blast away on Army. So Army loses to Notre Dame. So there goes that. And then it gets the thing about this is where it's going to get fun is everyone needs Boise State to lose, because if Boise State doesn't beat, it's probably going to be Colorado State for the Mountain West Championship. All of a sudden, the American Athletic Conference champions are going to be right there, because Boise State's not getting in as an at-large. And so if you're Tulane, if you're Army, if you win the American Athletic Conference championship and you get Boise State melting down on the right day, you're in the college football playoff.
I think we're in for a pretty wild final few weeks. Pete, we appreciate your time today. We'll have you on again soon if that's all right.
Anytime. You have a great one.
Pete Futak, college football news. I mean, the guy, you could ask him about literally anything college football related, and he knows. He is like, I mean, I hit him up 10 o'clock last night, and he was like, no, it's 24 hours a day over here, man, no problem. So,
what a guy.
Big fan of Pete Futak. collegefootballnews.com, like I said. All right, I'm very excited about this new partnership here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM on the Sean O'Connell Show. Winter tailgating, Utah football, stylish. What do these words bring to mind for you? Well, Wooden Grail. The Utah-born hat company has really blown up. They've got the coolest, most stylish, highest quality headgear, really, that you've probably ever seen. If you haven't worn one yet, you can feel the difference. They're a new partner, and they've grown hugely over the last couple of months. Got the official licensing deals. Now they can sell Utah gear, Aggies gear, Cougars gear. They also made partnerships with Kansas State, and they're making gear for several other universities. So holidays are coming up for the sports fan, the Coug or the Aggie, or especially the Ute in your life. If you want them to be happy with the hat, go for Wooden Grail. Gift cards are a perfect stocking stuffer. Go to their website, woodengrail.com, click to buy gift cards, or, of course, pick out a hat. If you're confident that you know the aesthetic for that loved one, grab one of their incredible hats. The Flip the Script is my favorite. They also have great trucker hats. They've got this really cool monochrome Utah one that's corduroy. I'm telling you, these are fashion accessories now with your official licensing for your favorite university. woodengrail.com. Tell them that OC sent you. And if you want to see them in person at the Utah tailgate against Iowa State, you can buy one of the Wooden Grail hats right there in person. So come see us on Saturday up at the ESPN 700 tailgate. Grab yourself a Wooden Grail, march over, honor the seniors, and hopefully, somehow, fingers crossed, Utah football can get a win. All right, Red and Blue coming up. Jerem Jordan joins us next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Checking in on some red and blue. We talk Utah and BYU here on your home of the Utes. Jerem Jordan, BYU Sports Nation, friend of the program at this point, joins us to talk about BYU's first loss of this football season. Jerem, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, Sean?
Doing great. It was actually an awful weekend of football for me. Utah loses, and the 49ers find a way to lose yesterday.
I'm a Seahawks fan, so I had a great time. I don't know what you're talking about.
Ugh, terrible. And, of course, BYU stubs its toe against Kansas. Look, they're still in a very good position for the season, this BYU team is. They control their own destiny, but now they've got a tough one against Arizona State coming. What happened through your lens in the Kansas game?
Yeah, it's a wild one, right? Because BYU only gives up 17 points but loses at home. That's frustrating. I'm sure Utah fans can feel the same way of like, hey, the defense was great. What happened with the offense? That's what happened this week. There were 4 moments that really stick out, Sean, where if one of these things goes BYU's way, I think they win the game. All 4 did not. 1, the fade at the end of the first half that's intercepted, which, by the way, is the same play on the 2-point conversion at Utah that was intercepted as well. Unfortunately, that play, that's got to be deleted from the playbook because it's not to the back pylon and it's not good enough. If you're going to throw that pass, I think you throw it to Chase Roberts and you got to put it up higher. That's number 1. Number 2 is the fake or the pooch punt, an incredible 2-bounce weird play where Evan Johnson doesn't turn his head around and hits his helmet. Jacob Robinson has a clear recoverable fumble moment and it squirts out from him. Kansas scores the game-winning touchdown there. Even then, he had an interception at midfield that you go 3 and out on. And then, of course, BYU drives down. They're going to make the game-winning play again. They're going to survive the magic, the destiny. 1st and 10 to the 15. They don't cash in. They got a penalty. They lose. It's like, oh, man, if one of those 4 things occurs, BYU wins that game. Defense was spectacular. 242 yards allowed, 17 points. Offense, only 3 touchdowns the last 25 possessions. That's not good enough.
So now let's turn the page and let's talk about Arizona State. And I saw this on your Twitter, and I've been making the same observation. Arizona State opens as a favorite, and that gap has grown even bigger. This is a game late in the season at night in the desert where great teams have fallen in the past. What do you think of the matchup, and do you think that this BYU team will respond in kind?
BYU's responded pretty well to the last couple of losses they've had. Last year, after the Oklahoma State loss, the offseason, they responded with a 9-game win streak. How will they respond this week? I think the sense of urgency, the kick in the pants, certainly is there. And it's a huge game. Today on BYU Sports Nation, I said, is this the biggest game in BYU football history, given, obviously, playing for national championship, blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying in the modern era, with a chance to get to the Big 12 title game, you got to beat Houston, of course, too. But then the playoff, this is one of the biggest games you guys ever played, and it's against a very, very good Arizona State team. Last week I felt like Kansas, this was trouble. I said this is a high-alert game. This team could very easily be 6-3, 7-2 if they had won some one-score games. They won 5. They finally get one against BYU. Arizona State's better than Kansas. Sam Leavitt might be the newcomer quarterback of the year if that was an award. He has been tremendous. The kid at BYU recruited a little bit. Out of the portal, ends up going to ASU because when Kenny Dillingham was at Oregon, he liked Leavitt out of West Lynn, which is in the Portland area. He's been crushing it. Cam Scadaboo looks like he had a concussion every play because he shakes his head. He's just knocking the cobwebs out, and then he gets back at it. He's like a juggernaut. He is a fun player to watch. He's tough to stop. Jordan Tyson's been a tremendous receiver, had a great game against Kansas State, which in the end, that score looks closer than it was. If you watch that, it was domination by Arizona State against K-State. So it's a tough man, but BYU has a good fan base that will show up down there in the Valley of the Sun. And will BYU win the game? I sure hope so, but obviously it's a big one. It's a tough one, and BYU's got to go on the road and show up and win this. Otherwise, they're probably out of the Big 12 title game. There's scenarios with 2 losses if this team and this team does this or whatever, but whoever wins this game, ASU, BYU, they control their own destiny by needing one more win to get in.
I think Cam Scadaboo is maybe the most underrated player in the entire country, and if he's 100% healthy, things can get bad. I actually think he has a tick. I don't know where with the head shake thing, because I made that same observation. I'm like, oh man, he's a little banged up, but he's been doing that every game for his entire life, and I just didn't notice it until he played Utah.
I needed to break down the Sac State film to know. No, I'm just kidding. It was kind of like Mike Tyson biting his glove. It's like the same thing. It was like, sorry, what are you doing right now? But he's a baller. Great hands, super tough. I don't know if anyone's called him the Juggernaut, but that's my nickname.
I like that because he's kind of built like the X-Men villain Juggernaut as well. It works. It works on so many different levels. Jerem Jordan's our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. I think BYU is going to be punished more for one loss in the rankings when the college football playoff comes out than they probably deserve to be. I think that the AP has shown that. It's like everyone's just expecting for the other shoe to drop with BYU, and I know BYU fans have felt that way at times, but I don't know. There's not even a question here. I feel like people are waiting for a BYU failure because there's no superstar on this team and there's nothing that they can really glom onto as a good reason why they should have been undefeated in the first place.
Yeah, star power gets you a long way. It's like you look at Boise State, it's like, well, what are they getting credit for? Losing close to Oregon? Like, is a good loss better than a good win? Like, it's weird, right? Star power matters. BYU doesn't have a star per se. They've got a bunch of very good players. Complements your football as a team. But yeah, when you're not having enough sort of convincing wins, you tend to look at margin and then you go, well, are they getting lucky? Is it takeaways, which BYU should be credited for, by the way, their ability to take the ball away. Arizona State, the same amount of turnover margin as BYU, so that's going to be a huge storyline in that one. But yeah, I'm with you. I get it. Like BYU was playing on a knife's edge, and it had kind of fallen in their direction 4 of those one-score games, and then it didn't in this game. It's hard to win every game of the regular season. Like in a power league, BYU's second year, that would have been amazing, and it was there for the taking. But when you zoom out just a touch, you're like, look, if BYU can pull off an upset on the road this week, beat Houston, all the same goals they had are in play. It just all boils down to these 60 minutes in Tempe, and then obviously you got to beat the Cougars at home against Cougars, and you're in the Big 12 title game with 60 minutes for the playoffs. That would be beyond your wildest dreams at the beginning of the year, and that is still in play for the Cougars.
Okay, so I think I've been asking you this pretty frequently, but as of today, your expectation for a Big 12 conference championship matchup would be which 2 teams?
Obviously, Brigham Young University's intercollegiate football team, and then against Rick's. No, I'm just kidding. Colorado's looking pretty good, but what if Kansas beats Colorado? Like, this could all get blown up. Kansas is very interesting. The way Colorado's playing, you like their chances, but I'm telling you, the Jayhawks could easily, if they had just kept on to some leads in the fourth quarter, they could have been the team that they were predicted to be, and they could be in the hunt here. They are not. But they're only one game out of like 4th, by the way. That's how clustered this whole thing is in the Big 12. Yeah, I mean, we could have some wild situations here at the very end. BYU and Colorado and Arizona State, and like, does some 3-loss team somehow get some tie? I don't know. I don't think so, but there's a couple teams in the mix, and BYU has an opportunity there. Arizona State's got to feel great. We win a home game, and then we beat Arizona, who's really struggled. Colorado, yeah. Kansas could blow this thing up, man. If they beat Colorado, it changes everything. But just hoping BYU's got a shot in Arlington. That would be pretty sweet.
This Big 12 whole anyone can beat anyone thing is something that I got very used to in the Pac-12 conference when Utah was there. Jerem, it's not cool. It's not fun. I don't like it. I mean, I'm not surprised by any result.
You want an elite team that everyone guns for?
I actually don't. I actually do like the fact that you have to tune in every week to know who's going to win a game, and that's not the reality in the Big Ten all the time. That's not the reality in the SEC or the ACC all the time. So from a football fan perspective, when you don't have a horse in the race, it's more fun to tune into games and be like, oh, look at that. UCF can beat Colorado. I didn't know that was going to be a possibility. I didn't know this would be a great game or whatever. But if you're talking about what best serves a league from a financial standpoint and representation in a college football playoff, it's the same song that was sung about the Pac-12 for the last decade, and now it's here in the Big 12, and that is what I don't like.
Yeah, and it was funny because we knew it was last year in the Pac-12 last year, and then the league showed out to have its best year ever. There were 5 teams ranked at the end, and It was like, well, now you show this. You showed this a year ago, you wouldn't have had that same TV deal offer, and maybe the league survives, right? Yeah, it's pretty wild. And not everyone gets to play each other. Like, let's be honest. The way the Big 12 was constructed when Texas and Oklahoma were in there and before BYU got in there, everybody played each other. Like, that was pretty awesome. The champ was truly the champ because the top two teams get in. You had no divisions, blah, blah, blah. That's the thing of the past. It's over. Reese Davis, I think, said it really well. He said, I don't know if the league's deep, but it's very wide. And I thought, you know what? That's actually that's a pretty good description. And let's be honest. Like, Utah did a great job of stepping through the open door when, like, USC and Oregon and Washington, they weren't kind of the same programs they'd been in certain years. Why not walk through that door? Why not be that team? And that's what BYU's trying to do this year with it. They're looking around and going, well, who's the best team? And everyone's looking at each other like Iowa State and Kansas State would be like, well, we're the incumbents here, but it doesn't mean we're going to win it. So it's been kind of fun for whoever is going to go. Like, obviously, BYU is trying to take advantage of that opportunity. Is it sustainable year over year? I don't care. Is the Big 12 team that goes to the playoff going to get beaten up in that first game? I don't care. I just want BYU to have a chance because in one college football game, you'd like to think something good could happen.
Look, if Texas wins the SEC and BYU or Colorado or Arizona State win the Big 12 and SMU somehow finds a way to hang on and Oregon wins the Big 10,
all the newcomers.
And I don't want conference realignment to be vindicated in that way, Jerem. So I'm rooting for some incumbent to finally win.
You want like the old the tradition. Come on, Alabama emerge. Someone do something. Texas A&M actually win something.
I need Indiana to win the Big 10.
Indiana, bro. What if? I mean, they'll have that opportunity against Ohio State, which for BYU, it's too bad they don't have one of those lingering here at the end. I mean, Arizona State became good. They got ranked. They'll probably be ranked tomorrow night in the college football playoff rankings. But I wish BYU had some top 10 other teams to sort of validate at the end. Unfortunately, it didn't shake out that way. But honestly, you kind of just win the games in front of you. If you're BYU, you're 11-1, and you'll be fine. You have the opportunities you need. It's not the WAC, it's not the Mountain West, not Independence. You're in a conference. You be a top 2 team in that league, you get a chance. And so it's nice that BYU waited until the 12-team playoff year to just explode in this way because it's been a heck of a journey. I know people were disappointed today, but the chances of BYU going 9-1 in the first 10 were very small. They've done it. They have an opportunity in the next 2 weeks. Let's go.
Jerem, thanks for your time as always. Appreciate you.
You got it, Sean. It was good to see you at the BYU Utah game, man.
It was. Jerem was the best dressed guy in the press box, at least at that BYU Utah game, which I was not overly comfortable with because I like to be stylish, but he just knocked it out of the park. So
I liked your Letterman.
Thank you. That's Porter's voice, by the way. He's been holding it down for the last little bit here, and will be he'll be hosting. He'll be co-hosting. He'll be leading the charge on the Drive with Spence Checketts. We'll talk to Porter Larson next and give away some Goo Goo Doll tickets and some Lemon Shark Poke gift cards with some topical trivia. Wrapping it up next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. Wrapping it up on the Sean O'Connell Show, this tune is Goo Goo Dolls. And I have 2 tickets to give away to a Goo Goo Dolls show, August 26th, Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. So you got to wait for it, but that'll be a good show. They are great musicians. Love me some Goo Goo Dolls. We also have Lemon Shark Poke, which is right here, like 2 blocks, not even 2 blocks, like a block east of our Broadway studios on 300 South in downtown Salt Lake City. It's down the ground floor of the Judge Building for some Lemon Shark Poke. If you could answer this question, giving up 49 points to Colorado means that Utah's defense is no longer the number 1 scoring defense in the Big 12 Conference. Who takes over that number 1 spot in Big 12 scoring defense rankings? 877-353-0700 on the Dish Pros text line, if you know who that is. I mentioned it earlier on the show. It is rather inconvenient. There's your hint. Sean O'Connell Show is finishing, and the drive will be hosted by Porter Larson with a special guest host in studio the whole day.
Yeah.
Very excited about that. Trey
Aren't
Fitzgerald just hanging out, judging me quietly this whole the whole final part of the show.
You got a little, like a pet in there for your last segment.
A pet? I don't know if I would characterize it that way.
In the most endearing way possible, I mean that.
I don't know if you tuned in for the 12 minutes that I allowed myself to talk combat sports today, Porter, but spent some time on Friday night's debacle, although you can't really call it that because it was a massive success business-wise. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, and then, of course, Saturday was a much more relevant, real competition with Stipe Miocic and John Jones. Also, the co-main event there was great. Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. Did you get to watch both of these events, either of these events?
Yeah, all of it. And as you mentioned, I want to also revisit the numbers on the Jake Paul stream thing. I mean, regardless, it was remarkable numbers.
Uh-huh.
I also think like half of them were people couldn't figure it out because it wasn't streaming and buffering and going to their laptop and trying to do it there. I saw it.
All right.
Everyone was doing that. I was doing that.
Is that unique, though? Is that counted as a unique stream by Netflix?
Probably.
Because it's the same account.
That's true. I don't know.
Regardless. What if the number was really 3 times higher because all the families that share accounts?
Right. There we go.
That would be bad.
I mean, he got a lot of people to tune in for that. It's Mike Tyson. I mean, it's a social, cultural phenomenon, right? And guys like me grew up listening and hearing about Tyson fights. I saw one when I was like in diapers.
Yeah.
Right. I saw one when I was like 13.
Dude, I only saw like 2.
But so it's going to draw eyes. It's going to draw attention. And Jake Paul, he's good at that. He's good at garnering the marketing side of it, the literally just attention, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah. And
brings it into the sport. I don't like it for the sport. I think it's kind of gross that a 58-year-old guy is getting repeatedly punched and beat up on. But Mike also like doubled his net worth in one night, which cool for him.
Which what's funny about that too is he probably did double his net worth in one night, but he also in that fight made 1/20th of what he's made his entire career.
Right.
And so much of it has just been squandered away. Like, he's one of the ultimate cautionary tales, one of the ultimate redemption stories from a reputation standpoint as well. And look, he seemed to be satisfied with the result.
I think he just wanted to box in front of his family and kids and then make money to live in his retirement.
That's what I mean. And
that was his goal.
He didn't even say he was done. The Ariel Helwani asked him afterwards and was just like, is this it? Are you done? He's like, I don't think so. And Ariel Helwani was like, well, who are you going to box? And he looked at Logan Paul. He's like, I don't know, maybe his brother. And
just whoever. Give me money. I'll fight someone.
Yeah,
Put someone in the ring in front of me. I'll punch him in the face.
And look, we love the circus as Americans. This is ancient Rome, and the gladiators are there, and they're giving us free bread. So we showed up, and Netflix wins. Man, that was and look, a good test for Netflix to see if they can handle NFL streaming numbers.
They'll need to figure some things out before they do some NFL Christmas Day. So they'll need to figure out the live streaming thing before Christmas Day. But that was probably a good test run for them. I think it's an unfortunate place in combat sports where we have a bazillion times more people watching that than watching John Jones fight the next night.
Yeah.
Charles Oliveira, as you mentioned, was a phenomenal showing as well. Those are two of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, and got a fraction of the attention that the YouTuber, who, let's give him some credit, he's a good boxer now. He's gotten to the point where he's a decent athlete. I find nothing credible about what happened Friday, and still that's kind of the topic with that guy. But yeah, some good fights on Saturday as well that were a lot of fun to watch.
I want to talk to Jake Paul and be like, okay, so he's changed his body. If you watch his Tommy Fury fight, which is the only other like half legitimate boxer that he fought, right?
One of two active professionals that he's fought in his weight class. One of two, and he's 1-1 in those fights.
So Tommy Fury, he weighed like 180 pounds and looked like a 180-pound guy, and he just juiced himself all to hell to get big enough to fight Mike Tyson. And now, like, there's been conversation, maybe I'll fight Canelo or somebody like that. It's like, how are you gonna like get the needle and deflate yourself now? Right. I need to talk to Jake Paul about his body composition plan. It's crazy.
That's another part of it where, as you mentioned, we're leaning so far into the circus aspect of it, where we have a guy who fought Mike Tyson at heavyweight who started his boxing career fighting Nate Robinson, who is the size of a toddler.
Correct.
Like only a few years ago. So it's a different world when that's the kind of the center of the boxing world right now, where, you know, Tyson Fury, Usyk gets. I feel like no one was watching that or even all that into it.
Fury and Usyk are fighting again at the end of this year.
And no one's talking about it.
And no one cares because they want to talk about Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul. Anyway, I shouldn't say no one cares. Real boxing fans care.
I care.
But there's not enough of them. All right. Stay tuned for the drive.
Dude.
By the way, the correct answer is Iowa State, your opponent this week. Iowa State is now the number one scoring defense in the Big 12 Conference after Utah gave up so many. It goes Iowa State, then BYU, then Utah. So you hope for a return to form from the Utah defense. It'll be Porter Larson and Trey Fitzgerald hosting the drive instead of Spence Checketts. Stay tuned for that on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.